want to ask Evan if he had the sheets that need to be filled out.
I have them.
Oh, you haven't? Okay.
For 195?
No.
Oh, 995.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
Seeing
busy this past month.
Seeing quorum, the chair opens up the Wednesday, August 1st, 2018 meeting of the Mashpee Planning Board. We're meeting here at Wacoit Meeting Room, Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, Mashpee, Massachusetts. I want to welcome everybody and let you know that this meeting is being recorded and videographed. If you have the opportunity to speak to the planning board, please use the microphone at the podium or the mic stand, whichever you're more comfortable with. State your name, where you live, who you represent, and your business. Please note, all comments from project proponents, the public, and support staff are made through the chair. The chair decides if the board will respond or take your comments under advisement. The chair may also recognize for a response other board members, support staff, or the project proponent. We encourage public participation, and we look forward to what you have to say. I invite you to stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So we have 3 sets of minutes. I've looked at 2. I've looked at June 20th and June 28th, and I have no comments. I'd like to table July 18th. Let me just check with Evan.
What's that?
Evan is finishing up copying.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of June 28th and June 20th as written.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the way we discontinue the July 18th.
Yeah, we'll keep the July 18th ones
Okay.
on, just write that out. I don't think the planning board has ever had so much paper in front of it as today.
No.
Okay, so, we have a bill from Charlie. It was on the draft agenda, but it isn't on this agenda. I would like to, accept a motion by roll call vote to add, Charlie's July 2018,
Make a
bill on
motion
the
to add
agenda.
June 18th,
Is it June or July? I think it's
July.
July.
Oh, July
2018,
2018 payment of I don't know how much
on the agenda.
on the agenda.
Second?
Okay, by roll call vote, Rob?
Yes.
Aye.
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 Okay. So the bill is for the amount of $995 for the work for July 2018. It includes inspections at Blue Castle Drive.
I make
The-
a motion.
Okay,
We pay Charlie for the July inspections of $995 for
Se-
various inspections of the different projects.
and one regular meeting.
And the regular.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have a public hearing at 7:10. Is there a notary in the room? We have to have notarized, I think. It's a special permit modification. Hey, David. It's okay, we just started. Okay, well, when we get to that, we might, it doesn't have the notary language, though.
Okay,
But I think all the special permit modifications do, don't they have?
yeah, usually they do.
Okay, well, we might have to notarize those at a different time, okay.
do anything.
So anyways, Maria Silva, good news.
What's the matter?
Maria Silva got a job at the
Yeah,
county.
Yeah,
So she's full-time at County Human Services, so she will be leaving the post as administrative assistant for the planning department. The bad news is we have to find another part-time person. Oh, we could do this. I'm sorry, Jen. Under board member committee updates, we need to define board member assignments to the Community Preservation Committee, Design Review, Environmental Oversight Committee, Historic District Commission, MMR. Also, there's a new one, Affordable Housing Committee RFP Work Group. So, I'd like to nominate Joe for the Design Review, Plan Review Committee.
second.
Would you accept our nomination?
I'll accept it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'd like to nominate Joe to the Environmental Oversight Committee.
I'll accept it.
Is that second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to nominate Dennis to the Historic District Committee.
Second.
Do you accept that nomination?
Yep, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd like to nominate David for the MMR Military Civilian Community Council.
Second?
Do you
Yep.
accept the nomination?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so there's two more. I can't nominate myself. But I'd like to be part of the Affordable Housing Committee RFP Work Group and continue on as the Community Preservation Committee rep.
I nominate Mary for the community preservation rep. Do we want to do all both together or one at a different?
One at a time is good.
Okay, so we got six.
Second?
You accept?
I accept the nomination.
We are all
All
in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I forget the first one, Mary.
It's the other one is the Affordable Housing Committee RFP Work Group.
I nominate Mary for the Affordable Housing Working Committee,
RFP Work Group.
the RFP working. Got that, Jen? Got that.
Second that?
I accept the nomination.
All in favor?
Aye. All right, good. So the Affordable Housing Committee meets tomorrow, and that's gonna be one of the subjects, is the RFP Work Group. I guess there's town-owned land in town, and they have to now do the RFP.
All right.
So. And so we can go right into committee updates. Cape Cod Commission?
Meetings were canceled, nothing to update.
I want to let everybody know that I did talk to John Idman. Is that- Idman, about, we have more members of Mashpee Commons here, hi. About, how a review would go for something like the Mashpee Commons expansion. And while he said that he hasn't seen the details, that it would, probably trigger based on, square footage of commercial space. Number of housing units, and the number of acres cleared. So, it would be a DRI. So I didn't know if we wanted to have him come in or wait.
Now, does the farm-based zone go around the DRI with the Cape Cod Commission?
I don't think so. He says, as it is now, as the RPP is written now,
Yeah.
it would still trigger the
Still
same
trigger the-
thresholds. And
yeah.
he did say that there's already some decisions from the 1980s. And I didn't email him back, like, so what has the Cape Cod Commission decided on this property to date? But I will.
Yeah.
Okay. All right,
The 7:10, we could do the open public hearing.
I'm waiting for Evan. Community Preservation Committee, they meet next week. Design Review,
No meeting,
Environmental Oversight Committee,
no meeting.
no meeting for the Greenways Quashnet Footbridge, Historic District,
No meetings.
MMR Military,
No meeting.
Plan Review. No, okay, I don't think that's one of our meetings that we cover. Okay. Seeing that the appointed time has arrived, the chairman opens up the Mashpee Planning Board public hearing notice pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40A. The Mashpee Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, August 1st, 2018, at 7:10 at Mashpee Town Hall, 16 Great Neck Road North, to consider an application from Southworth Mashpee Properties LLC. Property owner Willow Bend Country Club, map 63, block 89, a request for modification number 35, a special permit for Willow Bend Country Club. The modification for special permit seeks permission to construct an additional 22 units on a 9.3 acre parcel located north of Sampson Mill Road. With these changes, the total unit count for Willow Bend project is within the 287 units currently authorized under the special permit. A plan is also being submitted for approval simultaneously. Oh, is that why there's two sets of plans in our
Yes,
packet? Okay.
right.
Simultaneously for the proposed new cul-de-sac off Sampson's Mill Road to serve the units. All units will be connected to and served by the existing privately owned wastewater treatment plant, which serves the entire Willow Bend project. Submitted by Mary Wagon, Chair, Mashpee Planning Board. It was published on Friday, July 13th, 2018, and Friday, July 20th, 2018. And there's also a letter. It's the application for modification to a special permit, modification number 35, notice to abutters in your packet. Okay, so I'm going to recognize the party proponent.
Great. Good evening. For the record, Jack McElhenney, attorney for Southworth Mashpee Properties, the owner of the property. With me is Matt Eddy from Baxter and Nye, who is the
Hi.
project engineer and surveyor. As noted, we are proposing a new neighborhood consisting of 22 townhomes, 11 structures, 22 units, located north of Sampson's Mill Road. The project, these townhomes would be very similar to what we have done most recently in the area that we refer to as the Village. They've been very happy, customers have been very happy with the layout, et cetera. These would be along the third hole of what we refer to as the Bend 9 hole course, and would be served by a new cul-de-sac tying back into Sampson's Mill Road. As you can see on the plan, the site was created pursuant to we had to do a small land swap of about 3/4 of an acre between the golf course and this parcel in order to accommodate both, and that's reflected here. As noted, all units will be tied into the existing sewage treatment plant. There is adequate capacity for that. DEP has looked at this preliminarily and agreed that we can make that connection. As noted again in the notice, with these 22 units, that would bring our total unit count at the project to 273. And just as a refresher, the entire Willow Bend project is 327 acres. That excludes the new 9 golf holes approved by this board back in 2002. That was treated as a separate project on about 60 acres. So the remaining project is 327 acres. Of that, 180 acres of that is dedicated open space, which is approximately double what is required under the 1985 zoning that this was originally approved.
I didn't write that down. How many acres of open space?
Approximately 180, and that's all deed restricted. The project locus is adjacent to the Santuit River, but we are respecting the 200-foot setback. There's one small corner of grading within the 200 feet, but otherwise no impact within that. And we have received the comments from Charlie Rowley, and Matt will respond to those. At this point, I turn it over to Matt to talk just quickly about the infrastructure.
Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, Director Matthew Whitty, professional engineer with Bachelor in Engineering and Surveying. I just will walk through the existing conditions and then the proposed project quickly. I'm gonna hit on a few things that Jack already stated. But as he said, this is off of Sampson's Mill Road, which is on the southerly side of the project. Hole number 3, the golf course, is located directly adjacent to the proposed project to the northwest, we'll call it. These homes are obviously being constructed so that they will front on the golf course for the golf course views. We then have Santuit River to the east, which is actually the Mashpee-Barnstable town line. We have some inland bank under the Mashpee Conservation Bylaw definition, 100-foot buffers off of the wetland protection resources. We are not in any 100-foot buffers. We then also have a 200-foot riverfront area, which is this outer line here that you see. We are slightly in that area, as Jack mentioned, with a little bit of some grading, some minor stormwater management in that slate corner of that building right there. We have gone to Conservation Commission, and this was approved as an RDA. So that's all done. The project area, site area is approximately 9 acres, approximately 7.5 acres of that is upland. There's, in addition to the environmental resources down here, there's also, as you can see in the grading plan, the existing addition plan, the topography on the easterly, say, third of the parcel has significant topography, which we have, pulled all of the development to the west to stay out of, as much as we could with the topography, to stay out of the buffer areas, and obviously keeping it up by the golf course. As Jack stated, there's 11 structures that are proposed for a total of 22 units. They're all duplex townhome units. There's 2 different sizes. We have 5 buildings which are identified as the Willow style, which was submitted in the package. These are the larger townhome units. And then there's 6 buildings, or 12 units of what's called the Fairway unit. Again, these are identical to the structures, the townhomes that were constructed in the villages. And I don't know if you've been through there lately, but it's really, it's beautiful. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to
Okay.
drive through.
All right, will do.
But again, you see the elevations of those, it's
Yeah.
colors, scheme, everything, these are identical structures, same things that were approved previously. There's also a proposed additional amenity for this project area, a small pool area with a changing area. Obviously, they still have all the full amenities within Willow Bend with the main pool house, the clubhouse, et cetera. But they wanted, Mr. Southwick wanted to provide an additional small amenity within the center of this complex. As far as setbacks, we're meeting all setbacks. Under the overall Willow Bend special permit, there's a 40-foot setback required from the overall outside Willow Bend perimeter. The only property line that is the Willow Bend perimeter line is red line is Sampson's Mill Road, and we're well outside of 40 feet off the ground. Proposed lot coverage across the entire site is well below zoning allowance. It's about 13.1%. So lot coverage is on the low side. Access into the development, we'll be creating a new roadway access off of Sampson's Mill Road with a circular circulation getting back out to Sampson's Mill Road. It's approximately 900 linear feet of roadway. The road width is 22 feet wide. Parking provided. There's at least 2 parking spaces per unit. Every unit has its own garage, and then you also have a driveway space. Some of the driveways can 5
spaces?
parking spaces.
I mean, I saw 4 of the 5.
I'm sorry?
Is there a handicap there?
Yes, there's a
When they're
handicap
back
space
there,
there, and, yeah, 5
Right.
spaces, yep.
Oh, yeah, okay.
What about company traffic? I mean, parking. I mean, if I live in unit 2, unit 10, and I have,
It would be just like your, I mean, again, these are duplex units, it really operates like a single-family detached. You know, they have a garage, they have a driveway, the driveways can accommodate more than one car.
Right.
So it would accommodate, guest parking and so forth. Again, setback from the roadway,
yeah.
very similar to the villages.
Now, this turnaround, is that a one-way, or?
No,
can you-
that's two-way.
You
Yep.
go either way, come in this way, or come in out that, okay?
Drainage and stormwater management has been provided throughout the site, obviously meeting Mashpee zoning ordinance requirements and also DEP stormwater policy. I know Charlie has provided some comments here, and I spoke briefly. We'll obviously address, I won't get into the detail here now, other than questions that you may have, but, we'll go through in the comments that Charlie made. They're all, I believe, relatively straightforward in stormwater management, and we now work together to address those. For grading, as I mentioned, topography that drops off along the easterly side of the
Yeah.
site, so the rear of these units along here, we do show a proposed retaining wall. Charlie and I had a brief discussion on that today as well. That was one of his comments as well, as far as looking at the structural aspect of the wall and the foundations for proposed townhomes. Absolutely, that will occur, I agree 100%, but what we discussed and what I would ask is, that typically would be addressed at building permit level when you're doing the structural design and not at the planning board stage. So, our intent is not to submit structural design for the retaining wall and the building foundations. That would be part of your building permit process when you're doing construction documents. And that would be a typical process. So what we had talked about, if it's acceptable to the board, that can be made as a condition if you want, of the special permit.
How high is this wall gonna be, as we think, the slope?
It varies, the highest points are probably, I believe, about 12 feet or so.
Oh. So, what, are you gonna use the material like they used up at Southport?
I'm sorry?
What are you using, those blocks that,
Well, that's what we're,
I mean,
that's still potentially up in the air as far, the retaining wall, it can be either, it could be a segmented retaining
Yeah.
wall, which is like the smaller
but
interlocking
at 12
blocks.
feet, I would step it
It
back,
could
or I
also be
wouldn't.
the gravity blocks, or it could be, depending on, the location of them and the height and so forth, it could also be a cast-in-place retaining wall with a face on it. protected
So,
face, so.
but I just wanna, so, you're not gonna come back to the planning board with a plan for that wall, you're gonna go to the
No,
building
the
department?
plan's shown, I think, the plan is shown in plan view elevations as required under the submittals to the planning board, but the structural design aspect of it, that would be part of your building permit documents. That's when you're getting into your construction documents, that's when you would be dealing with those types of things.
Oh, so we still will, no? I mean, we got a lot of
My
problems.
concern here, Dennis, and I've expressed this to Matt, was that if you look at the plan, I'm looking at sheet C 4.0 of the
Yeah,
plans. if you
that's
wanna
what I
just
was
look at those.
Yeah, that's what I have, right?
You can see where the wall is, and it goes all the way from the left side of the drawing, all the way to the right, fairly long.
Yeah,
There are 2 numbers associated with the wall at various points along it. At the points where the wall begins, there's very little difference in the height between the top and what they would call the exposed height.
all right,
Exposed height is what you see. Depending on the design of the wall, if it was a segmented wall, like Matt has referred to, typically there's one block below grade,
right,
and then they have the grid system that helps to
Ties it
sustain
in.
it. If it's a concrete poured wall, it would have a footing that would either be out projected in front of the wall, or it would be in back of the wall somehow. But all along here, there are a variety of grades, and it ranges anywhere from about 2 feet at the very west end to about 20 feet
no,
of exposed height. And that would be around building 6, I believe. So my only concern here with not doing it at this stage, and I agree with Matt that the building inspector has the final say because it's considered a structure.
all right,
The the concern I would have, and maybe there's some language that can be put into the special permit this way, is that depending on the type of wall that they build, it might put the wall further out, or if it's a segmented wall and they have a geogrid, if it interferes with the foundation because it can't go back far enough,
All right.
they have to push the wall out, there may be a reason why you'd wanna see that again, because it
That's-
could
that's-
impact the final grading of the site. So, I guess it's, I had asked that at least some preliminary ideas be given so that we could see what to expect. It's easy to see what the changes in elevation would be.
Right,
It's not clear what the impact of the foundations, especially the ones that are really close, what impact they would have on that wall, because as you put a foundation close to a wall,
you got
it
pressure.
has a stress in it that tries to push the wall
Yeah.
out. So, those are technical things that Matt's gonna have to do a design for.
And I'm concerned about the safety too, if you had a 20-foot out, I'm sure you could have a
And that's
fence.
why, yeah, that's why.
Gonna have to have a fence,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I'm sure you could have, but I like to, see that,
And it also, when you look at the location of it and everything, I did make a comment in my report to the board, was that there are a couple of drainage areas that are on the bottom side of that wall that for maintenance purposes are gonna be very difficult to get to.
Oh,
So I think that needs to be addressed somehow. There's a couple of them that are inside the wall, the ones that are around the pool area, those are no problem.
yeah,
But there are two that are behind the wall at those lower elevations that might be difficult to get at. So those are my concerns, and I guess the board should debate how it wants to address the issue in terms of the detail of the wall, and whether you wanna make a provision in the special permit that says that if the wall design requires the relocation of the wall, that they have to come back and show you what those changes would be.
yeah, it sounds like a fair thing to do.
Yeah, there was a significant change in the horizontal location of the wall.
Yeah, and if it affects the grading, there's a possibility it might affect the one drainage area, maybe not two, but maybe one. And it might impact the area that is within that 200-foot riverfront area. That's the worst condition right there, actually. That little piece of it that's within the 200-foot setback from the riverfront area, that's where the highest change in the elevation of the wall is.
Yeah,
So if it pushes out to there, maybe the commission would be concerned with it too.
Now, isn't the, if you get abnormal stormwater, flow, that's gonna increase pressure against the wall, being right against the wall?
It would if the soil conditions were anything other than probably what is on site. But a typical wall, even if it's a solid concrete wall, would have some sort of impervious barrier behind it,
yeah,
and with pipes that actually come out of the wall, so that there's a way for the water to get out and not exert pressure on the wall. The second type on the segmented wall is that typically they're not watertight anyway. So even though they would have say a stone backfill right behind the wall that would go from top to bottom, and there would also be a lateral pipe that would be in there that would collect that water, so it would relieve the pressure. But that is that's a concern for pressure on the wall. It's not a concern, in my view, for the amount of water that would be discharging out of those pipes to the down gradient side. It would be relatively small and should have no erosion impacts or anything like that, David.
But if it's, flowing at abnormal rates, then,
It would
is
have
it
to.
gonna increase nitrogen, output onto the river being so close?
It's a fair ways from the river. I don't know whether in the RDA, whether they address that.
That river's already.
Most of the runoff that is going to get to the wall is gonna be traveling overland before it gets there. So there's gonna be some nitrogen uptake by the lawn itself, I would think. Whatever gets to the wall is gonna be the result of the runoff directly at the wall and what may travel over ground before it gets there. The roof drains are actually captured and taken away from the wall, and they're a part of the stormwater management system. So I don't believe that would be an issue.
okay, that was my concern about that wall, and, I guess, like Charlie said, the building inspector figured out, but if you have a change,
Yeah, the
It would
structural
be,
aspect.
it certainly would be appropriate too, once the design is done and if it's approved by the building inspector, that the planning board get a copy of it.
Yeah, I like to see, you know,
And I'm gonna need it, I assume if I am the one that goes out to make the inspection, I wanna have a plan to refer to, so, I'd wanna be able to see that as well.
Another question I have is, because of the proximity to the Santua River and Shoestring Bay, this project lies within the designated high sensitivity levels of the townwide sensitivity map done by PAL. And I'm familiar with the area a bit. I would consider that entire area archaeologically sensitive. Willow Bend is very familiar with discoveries during construction as to, habitation and occupation of that area. So because of the upland areas, I know there's some rather large shell middens as well on either side of the river that are documented. So, my concern is there plans to do archaeological testing? Because I would consider that entire area highly archaeologically.
I think it is, and there actually is, this is before my time, but there is an archaeological preservation restriction along large sections of the eastern side of that river. I don't know if you show them on a plan, but, we are outside of that area, but we are, well aware of it. I don't know that I have the original studies, but, the area that was designated as archaeologically significant back in the 80s is now defined by a preservation restriction, which covers a buffer along the river. And I think it's largely within that 200 feet, is it not?
Yeah, it is. I mean, this property line right along here, which for this parcel, that actually designates that this is all the preservation area, and then it actually continues, past this project and
Goes almost all the way out to 28, I think,
So are you saying that the parcel has been tested?
Yes, not by us, not recently, but in the 80s it was, and there's a recorded preservation restriction, I can get a copy of that for the board, that prohibits any alteration within that designated easement area. It's not actually part of our site, but it's
Right,
between our,
it's not part of that
between our
project.
site and the river.
And it literally, it's defined by the easement that Jack's referring to as a record document, and that record document, defines the bearings and distances of that property line. And again, then it continues out, going to the north all.
I'm more concerned with, seeing the report and interested in the findings, if the property was actually tested, what those findings were.
Okay, we can look into that. I'm not sure, the planning board may have better records of that. I don't know that we have them, but,
Do you know who did the report?
I think it was PAL. I think it was PAL way back when,
no, Tom Padella.
yeah.
He knew
Well,
all-
we can look into that.
Did a report on that. We did
Thank
have
you,
one.
Jeff.
My assumption is that, they drew that line based on the results of that report and decided the areas that would be protected and not be disturbed going forward are those that are covered by that restriction. But we'll look into that.
Ask Jackie too, because when they did the 9-hole golf course, we took a tour up there, we found the bottles. There was a
Yes,
doctor
yeah.
up in the, way in the back there, and that's where I found out about the Quaker Run. About the Quakers going down Quaker Run and escaping to Providence. And the Wampanoags helped, but Jackie would know too, doing the survey.
I'll talk to him. Thanks.
All right. Could I ask a question more?
Yeah,
of Jack?
yeah, and then I'll continue with the board members.
Okay, Jack, anything on the easterly side of Santuit obviously is in Barnstable. Did I not hear you say that there was a designation for the westerly side as well. Did the boundary line of this parcel limit the area that was identified as a preserved area in Mashpee as well as Barnstable?
Yes, I may have misspoke. It's on the westerly side, the restricted area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie, here's the Santua River right
Right.
down here, okay?
Right.
So the westerly side of it, this being Mashpee right here, this parcel line designates off of the record plan for that conservation area. All of this area, basically, so this property line starting here, this is all conservation
Okay.
restricted. And again, it continues, and I'm not sure the distance, but it continues significant
It
distance.
goes all the way up to 28 with some gaps, but
The only
But it is-
reason I
but
asked
it
is
is
I
on the
thought-
west side of.
I thought I heard you say the easterly side of the river, which would.
I think I misspoke there. Yeah, it is on our side.
Okay.
Can I just, is there anybody from the public that would like to see these plans while we're talking about them? Because I have an extra set. Is there somebody in the back? No? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry, John, I didn't say it sooner.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that lower area on your drawing, as it's displayed, the lower left, right in that area, I believe, if my memory serves, that's the actual historic location of the Sampson's Mill, where the actual mill was, the namesake, I believe. I could be wrong.
Joe, do you have any comments at this point?
Well, the only thing that wasn't mentioned when, there was a land swap to
Yes.
build that, lot C that is up on the upper left. During the design review, we looked at that and we would like to have seen that, some trees put in that area. Because right now, that parcel there, the last building up on the left,
Yep,
Yep.
that one.
that was, from there onward was part of the golf course. So that's flat, there's nothing there. So, design review wanted the tree line continued, onto that side.
And this plan, based on the plan review, we addressed
Design
that
review,
comment.
yeah.
For design review, we added that, so I added the notes here and here, and so you can see, if you recall at plan review, that tree line wasn't shown, so we're showing to, maintain existing vegetation where possible, and then it'll be augmented with additional screening,
Yeah.
material, evergreens, et cetera. A copy of this was submitted to the building commissioner, to Mike, for his record as a result of the plan review, and then also additional copies to the planning board.
Is that in our packet?
No, it doesn't show,
If it's not included in your packet, it was included in your packet emailed to you last night.
yeah, see, that would be,
So what's the, what's the numbering on the bottom? L point, one point
Yes,
oh.
it's shown on, it's L1, and then it's also sheets that I
Yeah,
submitted.
landscape plan right here.
L1, and then also 3.0 and 3.1. You can see it's the same area here on the master.
But there's no notes on three
No,
oh.
it just says-
Yeah, it's the
No,
same master, but then
there's no
3.1.
There's also a separate landscape plan included in your packet.
Yeah, and then 3.1, you'll see it there too. So it's reflected on 3.0, the overall master,
Yeah.
3.1 here, and then the landscape plan. So that comment was addressed
yeah.
from,
I'm sorry, it's in our packet?
Yes.
Is it? I didn't see that.
the sheet should have a revision date in it, number 7/24, and it'll say,
Looks like the same.
Yeah, I thought both packets in there
Yeah, they both
were
look
the same.
There are separate sheets. They weren't included in the packets.
They're not? Oh, they are.
So they're in the packets. The landscape plan is separate from the stapled together whole plan because it came separately. So you'll see one sheet, L1.
yeah, the original packets were submitted to the planning board submission, when the plan review submission was made, we then, after we received that comment, we made that modification and
They're on
submitted
the-
revised sheets.
That one right here.
Right here.
Is that the one?
Oh, but there's no comments on it.
That's the original one. That was the-
All right, so I think we need the up-to-date.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Right?
they were, yeah,
Okay.
we submit them, they were.
The revised plan is
Alright.
in your email. It's just with the included note. Same plan.
Okay.
I believe, I think there was some comment on the wall, but not into the detail that Charlie was talking about. So I think that would be the only item
Okay.
that that's missing, I guess.
Dennis, anything else?
No, I'm fine. I don't know stuff.
David, I think you're gonna do some research.
Yes, I am.
So Jack, anything that you find, if you can get it to Evan right away, and then
Yes,
he'll
we'll-
get it.
we'll do
and then
that.
If you can send it to David Whedon, that would be great. And then you're, hopefully we'll have a draft modification for review by next time. So David, if you have any draft thing you wanna put in, just send it back to Evan, and then we can hopefully have a draft to look at and hopefully sign next time this month.
Just to clarify, I have 20 days following a decision to draft a modification. So I like to draft that following any decisions or conditions added. Just to clarify.
Yes,
Good.
so, sometimes they come back to us the next time, and there's actually a draft modification that we can actually vote on. So with that time target in mind,
That's doable.
yeah.
Ed, one comment on the, between buildings 4, 5, and 6, the lower 3 buildings with the, yeah, the lower 3. Oh, I don't have the numbers on the sheet I'm looking at, but that one, yeah, those 3. The grade looks like, and you addressed the grade, I'm sure Charlie said, it is significant from the pool area all the way down to where your retaining wall is. You even actually have, it looks like tiered in, at least on the detailed plan, between the buildings. And can you address the sequence of a heavy rain coming down between those 3 lower buildings? Is it intended to cascade off of the retaining wall?
Yeah, I mean, the only areas that would, well, this is basically, these buildings would just be like a walkout basement, if you will. So
Right.
it grades from your, upper, from your first floor, towards the front, and then the grades just drop to the lower level, at your walkout basement
Yeah,
elevation, if you will.
but
And then,
a rain falling on the curve of the road right there.
well, that's all picked up, yeah. So the only thing that will actually, flow down between these buildings is vegetated areas. All the structures are all collected by roof drains and piped to the
Right,
ground.
but that,
stormwater
there's
management.
about, by my estimating, about 80 feet between the wall and, say, the center of the road. And it looks like it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, but again, the only thing would be flowing downhill, if you will, here, between the buildings, is a raindrop that falls out of the sky and lands on the lawn area. If it lands on this paved surface, it's going this way.
You're going that way.
Stormwater management
Okay.
system. So it would be, very light flows in those areas.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any comments. David, do you have any? Kevin? Charlie, we have a couple
Yes.
letters from you.
Yes.
So what's going on?
Go to those if you like. I know Matt hasn't had an opportunity to actually review the letter and get replies back. Some of it had to do with the plan to show monumentation of Sampson Mill Road and the boundary of the property. I did have several comments that have to do with the drainage with respect to the location of some of the paved waterways. I asked him if there was any possibility of finding an alternate location for the stormwater management area number 12, which is the one which is right there, yeah. That's the one which is the toughest to get to. It really only, it does take some of the overflow runoff from the area that goes into where the pool area is. There are subsurface drainage areas within that circle that capture all the runoff from the paved surfaces of the road and the driveways. But the overflow, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, I'm wrong. There is one driveway, and that would be for building number 5, I believe, is the one that's on, where that driveway pitches toward the building. It does not pitch toward the roadway, the circle roadway. So they have put in a catch basin on that curve. I asked that they put a Cape Cod berm along the edge of pavement here so that there would be no runoff that would go from the pavement over the slope and find its way to the wall, that it would be captured by the catch basin, go into the subsurface infiltration, which is below the wall. So there wouldn't be any topping of the wall in that location. There were some other details that I wanted on the detailed sheets. I did question whether or not the existing sanitary sewer had sufficient capacity for the 22 additional units, whether or not they'd had any discussion with the Mashpee Fire and Rescue with respect to fire flow, adequate fire protection, and so forth. I did ask for some grading comments, one handicap spot, and the other aspect of the drainage calculations were that they relied on the Barnstable County Soil Survey for the material which the runoff would infiltrate into. And there were no actual soil tests observed that I saw or shown on the plan. So typically I like to see those, and I believe your regulations require that for subsurface infiltration, because you never know what you're going to find. Sometimes you'll find good soil, sometimes you'll find lenses of very poor soil that interfere with the proper disposal of the runoff. So that's why I typically ask for it. I know that the Barnstable County Soil Survey is generally pretty good, and a lot of people rely on it, but in my view, it should not be relied on 100%. You need some on-site observations to confirm it.
And I think what we do, like, typically what we did with the villages and other projects in Little Bend, and there's actually a note on our plan to the effect is that, at the time of construction, the excavation, soil is where each system is going. And if there's an issue with soil, it's addressed, it's either an overdig, or if there's gonna be an adjustment that's made at that point in time. 'Cause we're talking about
That's-
multiple.
But we should put it
That's
in the
acceptable
special
to me,
permit.
but it should be put in your special permit
Yeah,
decision,
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did.
Yeah. There were some other questions. One had to do with the irrigation well that is located in the middle of the property. It shows on the plan of existing conditions. It might be one of the first sheets in your plans. I didn't see where that was relocated, or if it needs to be abandoned, or what the story was. There are also some controls for the wells that were going to go in a vault, but I'm not sure where the vault would be located.
Yeah, the well's gonna remain, it's an irrigation well for the, golf course only, it's been there for 20 years, I think, so. And there's just a few controlled structures that are above grade that will just be depressed below grade in H20, in traffic bearing structures, and the location of it is,
Is that near the pool, or?
yeah, it's out front.
I see it right here.
Right there.
Yeah,
It's basically in where the parking space.
part just so you can get at it then with the proper covers.
Generally speaking, the stormwater management system appears to be adequately designed. It's done by commonly accepted practices and methods. The one system that I did have a concern about was the one which shows on the plan here that's right parallel to Sampson's Mill Road. It has an outlet to the east of it, and when I looked at the drainage calculations for the 100-year storm, that outlet is actually topped by 4 or 5 inches, and there's flow out of the entire area onto the natural ground. But when you look at the topography, it's steep, and it goes right towards Sampson Mill Road. So I've asked Matt to look at that particular drainage system to see if it can expand it enough to be sure that the 100-year storm does not overtop that outflow. Because if it does, it will go right to Sampson's Mill Road, and you don't want that.
No.
There's plenty of room to expand it, do whatever they have to do to make sure that that does not overflow. The others are adequate, in my opinion. Most of the other comments that I had with respect to the details, we've discussed the wall. I did have some other questions about 1 or 2 of the sewer lines there, which I'm sure Matt will address in his comments when he finishes review. But that is an overview of what I felt was most important.
It sounds like you're gonna address all of
Yeah,
Charlie's,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, it's all, pretty straightforward conversation, like I said, work with Charlie on. And just one other highlight, just kind of to the A and R, I know you commented on the A and R. The A and R was already done, and that was approved by this board on May 2nd, I believe it was, which is the swap for the 2 parcels. So.
Right.
Memory failed me, I didn't recall that plan.
I'm gonna open it up to the public. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on this? Sounds like we already kind of have 1 or 2 conditions about the, if there's any changes to the retention wall, horizontal position of it, and then that design plan approved by the building inspector, commissioner will need to be sent to the board and Charlie, and then there might be a second one based on the archaeological restriction that's in place.
And it's soil testing, on-site soil testing.
Yeah.
That'll be witnessed at the time of
Yeah, okay.
construction.
I want to put that in a special permit. Make sure that, you know.
Okay. Are there any more comments from the board or town planner or the town engineer?
No.
Okay, so you're gonna have to come back. When would you like to come back?
Probably the first week in, the first meeting in September.
Okay.
If that would give us time, have some vacation on that, to dig through some files here.
Okay, so do you have anything on the agenda for that day?
September 1? Not yet. No, we have only one
Is that a
item.
Wednesday, September 1?
Oh, September, I don't think it's the 1st of September. But the first week of September.
Yeah, but what's the, you got a calendar up there? We need our calendar up here, Jen.
It's busy writing.
The first Wednesday is September 5th.
Okay, I make a motion, we continue the public hearing until September 6th, 5th, at 7:10.
Okay.
All in favor?
All right,
All right, thank
Thank you very much.
okay, thanks.
Okay, the next item is a special permit. And the applicant is Mr. William Lovely, property owner. The subject property is 2 Center Street, Assessors Map 36, Lot 47. The endorsement of special permit modification number 2 to list the uses of bylaw section, zoning bylaw section 174-25B10 to the special permit. No appeal filed.
You'll have to bear with me as I dig up the document.
So I have something.
Oh, I left it for you. It's right there. Go ahead.
Now, these signatures need to be notarized.
Okay,
Do you have the notary language?
that is how every special permit I have in the files reads, just like that. The first signature obtained, I think David signed it, you notarized it. And then
Right.
Deborah Damie is signed and certified that there were no appeals received, and the board certifies that signature, endorses the signature. But every special permit
Okay.
I've seen in the files reflects just that.
Okay. So we don't have to take a vote, we just have to endorse this. Right?
That's correct.
All right. So I'm gonna go to review of draft form-based code with revisions, Mashpee Commons. And, Buff Chase is gonna be our presenter.
Good evening. My name is Buff Chase. I'm with Mashpee Commons Limited Partnership. Hello, everyone. Hello. So, we started last October the Mashpee Commons Mashpee Commons by Design community planning process with the goal of hearing directly from the community what the community would like to see in the undeveloped portion of our property adjacent to Mashpee Commons. We've always said that the most important feedback comes from the community, and we would like to be the practitioners of implementing the vision of the community members, including the community's boards. And being the practitioners of implementing this vision in a way that continues to build on Mashpee Commons as a community asset, while also making the project feasible to us. We've also heard that the priorities of this board, when it comes to affordable housing and open space, and we think the conversation with this board has been productive when examining the form-based code. Tonight, we're not prepared, however, to have conversations on specific about affordable housing or open space, but we want you to know that we've heard and listened, and we're deliberating on how we might be able to incorporate those elements in a proposed bylaw. And further, how these topics will be addressed in the new regional policy plan that is being prepared by the Cape Cod Commission. There are different stakeholders in this town, and they've expressed varying priorities. And those need to be considered in our thinking and how we proceed. We've never wanted anyone to feel rushed or that we're being less than fully transparent when looking at this project and these proposals. And I think that's evidenced by the many months of the public engagement process that we've experienced to date and that we've facilitated with members of the community. In that spirit, we're proposing that this conversation continue and given the appropriate amount of time for review. At this point, we don't feel that the October town meeting is an appropriate amount of time to continue these dialogues. So we would like to defer approval or consideration of a warrant or any kind of mechanism that would allow for the acceptance of this form-based code until next year. I think we also might consider, given the fact that there would be time to have a larger discussion about whether there's another process that we haven't thought of collectively as a community to consider this fairly large development proposal for the center of town. Is there something that has not been used in the past? Is there something that we could all benefit from? I noticed that there was in the paper the other day that there's a proposal for a joint committee of 2 members of your board and 2 members of the Board of Appeals to study an issue. So that's one maybe precedent we should consider. But tonight, we think the best use of our time before you is to focus on the administrative section of the form-based code, and that I think many members of the board were interested in learning more about, particularly Dennis. So if that's okay with you, Madam Chair, I would like to call up Kara Wilbur and Vanessa Farr to
I just
get
have a
in.
couple of
Sure.
questions. Are you talking about May town meeting
That's the
or
next
October?
scheduled town meeting, yes.
2019,
Yeah.
okay. And I was just, you mentioned the new RPP from the Cape Cod Commission. Have you seen that?
No, but I'm told that there's gonna be a draft by the time of the One Cape
Oh.
Commission. So,
And I do have to correct you on something.
Sure.
You talked about the priorities of open space and affordable housing
Yeah.
being the priorities of this board.
yeah,
They're in the local comprehensive plan. They're in our surveys, so that makes them the priorities of the town.
okay,
I just want to be clear.
right, but having read
Upstairs,
your,
oh, Mary Wagon, why are you making these decisions? You know, I don't make these things up. There's surveys, there's local comprehensive plans that get approved by town meeting, so that's where we can
Right.
go back from. Just-
but as I mentioned before, there are different boards and different individuals that we've talked to that have other things. So we have to make the project viable. We can spend all this time and all this effort and not come up with a project that is viable.
It would really, really help. You had 4 to 6 visioning sessions with maps, with people putting comments on them.
I think we did have those.
Can't seem to get them from Russell for some reason. Okay, so. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna
but-
ask you to send me the link, because every time I go on there, I can't find them.
I can't find them either.
I can't find them,
We
and
can't find them. We can find the videos, but we can't find, it's not the notes that you had on the wall that were, I mean, the actual maps. We were told they were gonna be scanned in and available to us.
Okay, so we'll show them how to, yeah.
Send it to Evan, and Evan will send it to the board. Thank you.
Any other questions before I turn it over to?
Did we get the PowerPoint from the last meeting? Jennifer?
I do not know.
So wasn't there a PowerPoint from the last meeting? Did you get a hard copy of that?
I did not.
Okay. So,
It was submitted to me.
okay.
I have it.
So will you print out a hard copy for Jen?
I will print out 2 for Jen.
2 for Jen, that's great. Just to let everybody know, open meeting law, when you do minutes, anything that's submitted, even on a screen, is public information. So by open meeting law, every town has to keep that in a safe place. We refer to it in our minutes, and then it has to be kept forever so the public can have access to that. So that's what that short conversation's about. And it looks like we might have another one, which we do have a copy of. Jen, did you get a copy of that? Okay. Are there any, well, anyway, everybody can see it.
I just have one question. So that's surveys that you took, you're gonna send them to Evans, and we can see how many people wanted? Fine.
It's the paper, it's those big paper maps that people put comments on.
Yeah, I wanna see how many people like this, and how many people
I
just,
think Buff agreed to have that
I've been asking
sent
for that. and-
to Evan, and Evan will send those to us.
Okay, good.
What are you asking for?
This, like, you took a survey with all those meetings you had 6 meetings. People put pins on the walls and stuff. I'd like to see a survey saying 100 people like 5-story buildings, 100 people dislike that. I mean, the last time you did a survey years ago, we saw what people said. I mean, I don't know what the people wanted is in this farm-based plan. No, because I haven't seen the survey, what all the people said. You must have took like numbers to,
We took photographs of the surveys and the documents.
didn't you analyze them though? I mean, sit down and,
They're pretty obvious.
But I'm
all right, but
talking
I want
about
to see it.
something
I
else. So
vote,
you want a copy of all the pictures
Yeah.
of the dots?
or I want to see 100 people like this.
And I think there were compilations of people's comments.
Yeah, you
that
made
were
us
on the
right.
wall at the master, but also in the very beginning, you weren't there, you didn't come to
I
any of
came
these.
one meeting and
There were visioning sessions.
yeah,
And they were full-scale maps, and people actually drew on them. Do you guys remember that? You drew on some, John. And those, we were told, were gonna get scanned in, and we were gonna.
They're on the website. I'll show you right now.
Okay. But I still want the link.
Yep.
I want the link. That's what we're talking about,
that's, yeah.
the plan.
I couldn't see. I went on the internet and I made for whatever anyway.
I remember we sat around tables, and there was groups of people, and we all said what we
Yeah.
wanted, then one person got up and said, this group like this, and another group got up, they wanted walking
I
trails.
think there were videos of that session, but I haven't been able to find those. Were those sessions videoed?
Which ones?
The visioning
The
session.
visiting center.
I thought I recalled cameras there, yeah.
But I can't find those videos on Facebook. I can find the Tuesday talks. I can find the Tuesday talks, but I can't find those. And people had some really good ideas.
The closing's on here, the closing, presentation's on here.
We're just waiting
Right.
for the screen to roll up and connect, and then we'll walk you through those.
Hi, Vanessa. So why don't you give your names for the record?
Give you your name. Oh, my name's Vanessa Farr, and I'm with Principal, and
Kara Wilbur, your principal as well.
thank you for having me back tonight. So, is there a special button that we click to make this?
There's never been a special button before.
Okay.
F5 always works for me, but I don't know if Apple has. And when in doubt, press F5.
I never knew that.
Probably haven't had to do a PowerPoint presentation.
Try it again.
No input.
Some cord that's in.
Oh, Buff, can I ask you one more question? I'm sorry, you're already sitting down, but you submitted as a property owner, the form-based code book as a bylaw to the Board of Selectmen on July 9th.
Yes,
Are you going to formally withdraw that for the October 2018
probably.
meeting?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I just said.
That's true.
So I don't know about the formal process of it, but that would be the intention.
Because I was reading up on stuff, and a property owner can submit
I think maybe we have to,
a bylaw change, and I think that might be considered what you did on July 9th.
Do you guys have HDMI versions?
Because they handed it in to you for the October 2018 meeting, and you, instead of the Board of Selectmen having to sit to,
Well, I mean, I used my computer last time too.
I just don't want to mess up anything.
Good evening, I'm Tom Ferranti with Mashpee Commons. We did not formally submit anything to the selectmen. It was provided to the selectmen for review, and the request was simply that they review it, and if the discussion progressed to a point where it could end up on the fall town meeting warrant, that they would consider putting it on as a selectmen's agenda item for the warrant. So there was never a formal request made for them to put it on the warrant.
Okay, from the
There was no-
property
There was
owner.
no formal submission to them. It was delivered for them to review in draft form only.
John Cotton, our
Just to
Selectmen
confirm.
liaison.
So just to confirm, you're absolutely correct, but we have not reviewed any of the warrants, even placeholders or whatever, and we have not submitted any placeholders. And again, you've seen my request. It was denied according to, I wanted final approval from the planning board. That was denied. As far as I'm concerned, there is no other warrant out there or placeholder outside of what the planning board has submitted,
Yeah,
okay? Okay?
yep,
Yep, no, I
That
just
is-
want to
Yeah, just so we,
clear.
yep. Thanks for coming too.
no different than,
Yeah.
you know,
I know, another meeting, I'm sorry to drag you out.
no, not a problem.
We got it.
Hey, all right,
Okay.
perfect timing.
Except the display.
All right, so it's gonna look weird, but just bear with me. So it's mashpeecommons.com//
Oh, this
future.
is the, okay, so this is, all right, I was told it was on Facebook, first of all, so I didn't go here, so.
That's the URL, but we'll send it to you. So if you scroll down, it's kind of hard to
Try and go slow.
find, but if,
Try to go slow.
She goes too fast.
Thank you.
okay, so there's a, one of the presentations,
Which, Facebook?
closing presentation.
Facebook?
No,
This is just their website.
We don't need to go through all this there now. And then this is the Tuesday talk stuff.
Wait, slow down.
This is all Tuesday talk. All right, then you get to this section, results of the
Okay,
Mashpee Bud Design Visioning Workshops. So here are the maps you're talking about.
okay,
All right,
These are the physical paper surveys,
great.
the raw surveys, so you can see what people wrote.
yep.
It's confidential, everyone's names have been removed. And then the visioning summary overview is that sort of compiled
Yeah.
web of ideas.
So you went on Facebook to get this, or?
No, Russell told me it was on Facebook.
Oh.
So when I went to the Facebook page, it wasn't there.
I can take like screenshots and map out the links for you if that's easier,
Alright.
unless you have the
No,
actual
I
files.
think I think I was just on the wrong spot in the internet. I,
Okay, I couldn't find it.
I'll get you there, Dennis.
No, I can find it now. I said, how she just did it.
thank you.
Thank you.
No wonder Russell's like,
sorry.
"What are you-" Okay,
Okay.
there we go.
I like how she does this. Kara doesn't like to start presentations, so last minute she's saying, well, you're the one starting the presentation.
Yeah.
So we just want to give you a little bit of a walkthrough of the admin section. We know that there were some questions and concerns at the last meeting. I apologize, I was not able to join you for that meeting. I'm here today and I can help to guide you through this section of the code. And we're going to start off at this part, which is to talk about who currently has review authority now, is Mashpee Commons. So, as you know, the majority of the development is under special permit issued in 1986. And what that means is that all the projects in the land within the 86 special permit is reviewed by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Also, all 40B projects that are inside that area are reviewed by Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Planning Board has limited review, as does the Cape Cod Commission, for commercial spaces only as part of those 40B projects. The North Market Street project, which is located outside of the 86 special permit area, was not done by the Zoning Board of Appeals, but was done by the Planning Board and as a special permit, and the Cape Cod Commission under DRI. So to walk you through this proposal, the review authority includes both planning board and staff. And so we're gonna walk through these first 4 key types of projects and permit application types. Kara's gonna walk through the first one, which is the master plan. And we'll start here, and then we will move through to subdivision, large project plan, and then to small project plan. It may have been that in that last meeting that the order of presentation became confusing because, as we have indicated, we imagine bringing first forward a master plan before moving on to other types of applications. So with that, I'll let Kara walk through this section.
So you guys should have received the reordered admin section for those 4 permit types that
Right, we
hopefully.
got up to like, what is it, page 240?
It was,
And there's, then the pages from the original packet you gave us take over,
correct.
right?
Yeah, those.
Did you
the-
catch that?
Yeah.
The PDF they sent of Article 7 was just the first, like, half of Article 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're trying to give you guys pages to swap into your books where there's substantial changes to content, so you can have that information. So we talked about this a little bit the last time. The master plan process is that first level of review that really tries to look at the overall concept for a phase of the project and make sure that it's hitting certain targets related to, the layout of the neighborhood. And the review authority on that would be the planning board, and there would be a public hearing as part of that. And that's on the current page, 235 that we provided as, in advance of this meeting. The applicability for that, for the master plan process, parcels under single ownership, and assignment or reassignment of character districts within a pedestrian shed. So we can go to the next, and this is some of those graphic images that hope help clarify what we would bring forward as part of the master plan process. So on the left is an example master plan that might represent, you know, a phase of Mashpee Commons that would come in for master plan review. And on the right is a example regulating plan that would be a part of that application submission. The circle is a pedestrian shed that helps guide the distribution of the character districts so that there's a rational arrangement of those from the center out to the edge with more dense development toward Mashpee Commons' existing center and less dense development as you move outward. So these two images respond to each other, they relate to each other. The plan on the left is showing where the building footprints go, similar to the 1986 special permit. It shows that general concept. And the one on the right is showing the open spaces, street network, the character districts, and some of those other high-level elements that would come in under the master planning level. And these are some of those types of images that we would look at from the code to help guide. Those decisions and the standards would be taken from those pages, including block perimeter as well.
Okay, so just like your existing ordinance now, the admin section for the form-based code has procedures spelled out. So for master plan procedure, there is a time period that you have to review and hold a public hearing and make a decision about that master plan. There's also a revision procedure, and that once that master plan has come before the planning board and you've held a public hearing and given your approval or blessing to move forward, then any applicant can then come forward and bring a subdivision plan, a large project plan, or a small project plan. And those are the three key types of applications that you would then see. And so we're going to walk through what those three are and what those thresholds will be. So subdivision is what it is today. It's what you do. You have the authority to do it. There's a public hearing process. There's a time period. This is the language for applicability straight out of MGL. So there's no guesswork with this one. Subdivision is subdivision. Large project plan is where you may see buildings that are greater than 10,000 square feet. And the majority of, I would think, the projects that will come forward where buildings are larger footprint, they will come forward as a large project plan. And again, the planning board has the authority to review those applications against the standards of the ordinance. So large project plans typically get into significant on-site and off-site impacts as well. So that might be new streets, it might be stormwater, it might be civic spaces. Those kinds of things fall under large project plans. And so that section is page 7-239. And then this is the bucket of small projects that don't have as much impact. And once you've moved through master planning, the idea here is that a lot of the big concepts have been worked out and fleshed out, and the board and public have weighed in on. So these are projects that we want to try and move through at a more streamlined, in a more streamlined way, and can be handled through staff approval. This is a common way that form-based coding deals with small projects. And to sort of take a step into the backwards, so what we've been doing traditionally in towns of all sorts of sizes, we've had this system of having special site plan review with tiered levels of approval. So big projects with big impact are going to planning boards. Small projects with very little impact and easy to move through and approve and don't trigger lots of off-site impacts, those generally go to staff approval. So again, this is the spirit of both what I think a lot of our municipalities have been doing to try and streamline permitting, but also when we have a form-based code and we're taking a lot of the guesswork out of the review process, we can move along much more efficiently. So there is a special permit process that was not on that first set of 4 that we highlighted, and we wanted to show you that this still remains part of the administration section. It is here and tied to any special circumstance that the form-based code says you can do this if you go have a discussion with the planning board. And that's not the zoning board of appeals, that's planning board. And so that requires a public hearing, and it is in here for those certain special circumstances. Usually some of those circumstances are related to use, but I can't tell you the number of times it appears in here currently, but I'm gonna guess maybe 4, maybe 6 times, if that. So that is in there. Just to touch on the parts that we don't have slides for, so that you know they're here, there is legislative procedures identified, there's processes for appeals spelled out. We talk about nonconformity, and we also include the duties of each of the review boards and officials. So we also would like to remind the planning board that we have looked very carefully at compliance with MGL 40A and 41, sections 81K through GG, and that the permit types, the duties, responsibilities, and procedures, we've also looked very carefully at too. So if you have questions, this would be a great time for us to try and answer those for you.
Okay.
I'm going to start, because I'm going to reserve my questions for a later date.
Right. Small project plans. Who determine, I know you have a square footage, under 10,000 square feet, but you also said if it's a major impact, that 10,000 square, I mean, why isn't the planning board determined this is a small project, we're pushing on to the building inspector? I'd be more, I don't like the building inspector doing any of the planning. But,
Okay.
I mean, I would be more apt to go along with that if we review the process first to determine it's a small plan, but it's not gonna be affecting any other part of the development. And then, I noticed you didn't name anything about the plan revision. So that, to me, says if it goes to plan revision, they're the ones who have the most say, because they say, oh, we don't have to go to the planning board. We decide this was a small project. What is their function? You skipped that one. You went from small project to a special permit. But can you explain what do they do?
Sure, why don't we take those one item at a time? So the first one was a comment about the appropriateness of the building inspector being the staff, the staff person who is reviewing small project plans. So currently, your ordinance puts that charge of enforcement and authority with the building inspector. So that is one of the very last pages of the ordinance, section 174-102. Says this zoning bylaw shall be enforced by the building inspector who, upon being informed in writing of a possible violation of the chapter or on his or own initiative, shall make a cause to make an investigation, ... So that's who you currently have.
Yeah, he's our enforcer. I mean, I know that, he's our enforcer. When we do a plan, I could go to him and say, hey, they're not following our special
Yes.
permit.
Right.
That's what his job is. Now you put him in as a planner, though. He's got to plan a small project. He's not enforcing now, he's a enforcer plus a planner. So I don't really like that, but,
Okay.
so
Is
we're
there
going to talk about.
somebody, is there another staff person who reviews projects currently? So besides Charlie and Evan, are there other staff members who are reviewing projects before it comes to you?
Not that I know, I think Charlie and Evans do it,
So
you know.
Charlie and Evan are doing it right now?
Yep, and they've been doing a good job. I mean, I don't understand why we're pushing this off to the planning building, the building inspector.
Mary, may I interject? From time to time,
Sure.
I'll wait if you prefer.
No, go
Since we're
right
talking
ahead,
about
sir.
that small project, how does the building inspector go about deciding on site improvements? What authority, what qualification does he have to determine site improvements? Any site improvements?
So what this says is that if an applicant is proposing to make site improvements, and the zoning code is what's going to say what a site improvement is, then an application comes forward, and then the building inspector reviews it, and then gives a permit. So right now, the building inspector, if the building inspector finds anything that is out of compliance with your zoning ordinance, it's his or her responsibility to, an authority to then withhold a permit.
That's
So-
completely different than approving site improvements.
Yeah.
Approving
Yes.
anything other than what might be an infraction of a regulation or an infraction of a special permit or some other permit that had been issued, say, by this board or by the Board of Appeals. But how does he get to improve site improvements under a small project plan that's under 10,000 square feet? According to your proposed regulation, there's no notice, there's no public hearing. How does he get to approve that then?
So he reviews the application to the standards of this section, and then writes a decision, and then grants an approval, or a denial or approval with
Are you
conditions.
asking what legal authority does he have to do that?
Not only legal authority, but perhaps technical and professional
Yeah.
authority.
So the legal authority would be under chapter, chapter 40A, section 7. So, but I think the bigger question or the conversation I'm hearing
I don't
is,
think that's not a small section, so why don't you?
so I think what I'm hearing, though, notwithstanding what you're handing out, is that.
This is the zoning act, chapter 48.
Great, because I keep looking at it on my phone and the text is small.
I got it.
If you have an extra copy, I'll take one.
You wanna?
I think the bigger question that I'm hearing is who is
Right,
the
what-
most appropriate
I'm-
person to be reviewing small project plans?
I'll be much more at ease with this
Oh, she
farm-based
said-
zone if that was completely out of there. But,
Sure.
you know,
All right, that's a good point. Thank you. Is there other feelings about who the right staff person or persons might be for small project plan review?
I have, if
I
I
don't
may,
think it should
Mary,
be staff, I think that's what Dennis is saying.
yeah.
Dennis
Well,
is
I
saying-
heard him say he's not comfortable with it the way it is.
Well, I don't,
As the
I
building
don't,
inspector, I think he's more, he said that he likes it the way it is, which I believe, I interpret him saying, back to the planning board.
So
Yeah.
that's how you feel, Dennis?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't really like, and then, a lot of times, we say if a modification is we need a public hearing or not. I mean, so that's up to the building inspector now to say, this needs a public hearing? I mean,
there's-
what authority, I don't know.
There's
He's a building inspector. He inspects jobs, make sure they put the right 2x4.
He's enforcing the
You know-
zoning ordinance, then it is
Well, he
his.
enforces the
Right, but
ordinance from the
but that
planning board
means-
or
But
the
it also
ZBA.
means that he is going to determine if something is a de minimis change or not. And if it's de minimis, then he will authorize it. And if it's not de minimis, he'll send it back to the board that gave the approval in the first place. And then they'll have a conversation, and then they'll make the decision.
But that leaves out public hearings, though. I mean, if it's a,
Okay,
I think Evan wanted to say something,
go
so
ahead,
the
Evan.
chair
I think it's just
recognizes Evan.
important to remember how the mechanism of form-based code functions and that the definition of how that building or how that site improvement gets interpreted is defined already. So the standard should be clear and clear enough so that the building commissioner, the town planner, or the planning board, or anyone empowered to do so by the code should be competent enough to do so, given the clarity, and it's already been defined. Or should have been defined.
I gotta think about that, what you said, makes, but
I'd also like to plant one more seed of thought on this, is there are many towns who decide that it's too big of a leap to shift to one staff person doing projects up to 10,000 square feet in size. So what they have done instead is they've authorized with their ordinance a committee of staff who are typically already doing those project reviews for boards, generally town engineers, planning boards, public works people, zoning. So it may be that the right solution here could be a three-person or a three-person staff body that is already doing your project reviews. And again, to Evan's point, and this is the whole point of having a very prescriptive ordinance, it should be check the boxes. And small project plans do not involve significant off-site impacts. So these should be very simple projects that it's either they meet the standards or they don't. And so that's something I'd like to leave you with as something to think about, is that perhaps it's a consolidated review committee of staff.
Well, I like to leave the paper with, Mashpee's a small community. I understand this farm base for maybe Barnstable or Plymouth, a bigger community with more development. But Mashpee is a small community. We don't need all these different boards to check on our projects and that. I mean, I'm pretty sure the planning board can handle this, and Mashpee Commons could get most of the things they want. But you're comparing us with other bigger towns and with Mashpee Commons. We have one little development left, Mashpee Commons. They want to do it the right way, and they always been. I mean, it's nice what they've done. But you're trying to take the planning board completely out of this now.
I don't think that's actually a correct
Well,
statement.
I do, because you could have one big, large project, the rest could be all under 10,000 square feet or something, but I don't know why we're changing that. I mean, I understand Evan's point. We have a code, the code, but we haven't even decided if we like this code. I mean, I went right to 7 when you gave me this book, and I was all confused. I said, I didn't like it right from the beginning. I'm willing to work. I mean, I don't know, like Charlie said, what authority does the building inspector have to do this stuff? But I can't say no. That's it.
So that is, I think that the thing to know is that is something that we can work with. So if that's not the right person, then perhaps there's an alternative. Just like.
The planning board. We don't need no more alternatives.
Well, you have 3 other types of projects that you will be reviewing. So you'll have master plans, subdivisions, and large plans.
I'm not going to go to the public for a while.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
I'd like to say something here, because we're talking a big circle here.
What do you mean we're talking big circle? What do you mean?
I feel your pain.
Yeah, it's painful.
I really feel your pain, because
People don't know what the building inspector does versus what he doesn't do. He does all that stuff right now. the building inspector.
he doesn't take the
He
place
doesn't.
of the planning board, but,
No, he doesn't.
Right.
He does all that stuff on the board.
Not in this town.
Yes, he does that.
I don't think he does site improvements.
What is it?
Well, I'm out of order myself.
All right.
I'm,
But he does do sites, yes, when you build a building plan, he's responsible for the site itself.
Yeah, for
sorry.
example,
I
if
broke
you
my own
don't,
rule.
All right.
So I'm gonna continue, I'm sorry, I'm gonna continue with, board members. Joe, I'm gonna put you on the
okay.
spot.
I have to agree with Dennis. I don't, I wouldn't want the building inspector, what's the last item there? Changes to lot use, structure, site improvements, if the subject project property is up to 10 acres in a lot area. I think that's a pretty big area, and that should be planning board responsibility.
Right, and, yeah, and the 10,000 square feet, that's when it triggers a DRI.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I just don't see the building inspector.
so
I'm with Dennis.
again, I want to suggest or plant the little seed that there's sort of 2 pieces to this conversation. One is the review authority, and 2, it's these thresholds. So if this last one, for example, is something that causes discomfort and you think that acreage should be lower, no, the lot acres, for example, in the last bullet. Then, so we have kind of 2 decision points to make. Number 1 is who's the right staff person, if it's staff, and number 2, what are the right thresholds? So I would love to hear both of those things if
just
it-
did.
Yep, I
Two
heard from
different-
him. But I'm
So-
hearing that there's the, being caught up on building inspector, so we're hearing that one. But I think what might be really helpful for us to hear is if there is another version besides planning board for any version of these applicabilities. So would you be comfortable if staff reviewed something that was a smaller building? Would you be comfortable if staff reviewed something that has less acres disturbed?
That may be something we have to take under advisement. I have to
Okay.
think about that.
All right.
Anything else, Jim?
Oh, that's it.
David?
I would agree with Joe and Dennis's remarks.
Rob?
I agree with the board so far. Maybe I'd like you to address, and this is maybe for my own edification, the plan, the master plan, the large projects, the subdivisions, they're approved. The small projects, they're approved. The hammers are going madly. Somebody says, gee, they're not doing it right. What is our action for, let's say, enforcement or appeal? If somebody goes to the planning board of appeal, usually they want a variance, they want something waived. What, if something's going astray, all of a sudden, all these buildings are painted, camo. And, that wasn't part of the scheme, but it was something missed. And we want to say, time out. We want to look at it again. When can we look at it again?
So this is a question of enforcement, and again, it comes back to building inspector.
That's
So
what I was gonna say.
he's doing the job for you of making sure that what you approve is ultimately getting built. And if you alert him, because he doesn't see the camo building go up, and he should be seeing it because he's probably inspecting it as he's going along, and they're doing different phases of construction, if he sees that there's a violation, then he follows his regular building inspector procedures. And then there needs to be clarification of how to create how to get it out of violation.
Camo's a good choice though, because then it blends in with all the open space behind it. Can't see it.
There you go.
But it's a good question.
Someone laughed.
So
But,
there are staff doing work for you currently, and that doesn't change.
On a smaller project, though, the building inspector would be the boss of the whole thing. We, like what Rob just said, we wouldn't know they were doing something wrong because he's not enforcing our, zoning or whatever. He's enforcing his small project thing, so.
He's enforcing the
I
characteristic.
mean, I know he enforced the whole thing, but he's the one who oversees that project. The planning board don't even see small projects.
I know what you mean. He's inspecting something and permitting something that he's
supposed to be
he's
watching-
approved the
watching
design
over
of.
it,
So if
yeah.
he made a mistake in that,
Yeah,
then
there's a
there's one
conflict of
set of,
interest.
Yeah.
it almost feels like a conflict of interest, but,
So it
Anyway.
was pointed out to me earlier that the building inspector sits underneath the building commissioner in Mashpee. Yet,
what?
Yeah.
is that correct?
Yep,
Yes?
No,
yeah.
Did you
the
tell me
building
wrong?
commissioner who's the top.
Yeah.
At the top.
And
Okay.
then he may have inspectors that work underneath him, or he or she may
Is
be
the
the
building
only
commissioner
person.
actually employed by the town of Mashpee direct?
Yes.
Okay, so this ordinance is currently not referencing the building commissioner, it's referencing the building inspector, and this is your old ordinance. So it may be that perhaps this needs to change in not saying building inspector, but building commissioner.
I think, I'm not sure that would change people's comments.
right.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Okay.
Rob, did that issue get addressed, or do you want to continue with it, or go on to the
Well,
other one?
I just wanted on the table that,
Go to enforcement.
what is the board's recourse if we don't like, or we see things that the building inspector does not see? We say, we don't like the paint job. He says, it'll last 20 years, it's good by him, but we don't like it.
The
What's
building
our
inspector
recourse?
is employed by the select board, correct? He's appointed by the select board.
Right, but he has some independent, are you one?
No, I just want to say one thing. I think I can clear things up. I really do, just to, yeah, I think I can. So when you open up, I want to say something.
All right.
Okay, but no debates, so come on up.
Okay, thank you, thanks.
State your
And
name.
I do want to finish my sentence. I believe you can come, reserve your spot. But the building commissioner also cannot do what the Board of Selectmen tell him to do.
Right,
Or
'cause
her
there
to
is
do,
the- yeah, 'cause the
if
state-
it's going to be a violation of his
Life safety. and all that stuff.
license
Yep.
or whatever authorizes him to be a building commissioner.
think
So we need your name.
My name is Ken Masters.
Hi, Ken.
And I have a little bit of experience.
Really?
I was on the zoning board at one time, but my prior life too, before that, and now I'm a builder, so I know all about this stuff, I have a good knowledge of it. What the building inspector does now is he enforces the zoning bylaws. So if you go and you say, I have a house I want to put on this lot, he makes sure that that house can go on the lot, you have the proper acreage. So that's what he does, that's how he enforces the zoning bylaws. He also enforces like the sign bylaw. If you have a sign is going like that, you're not supposed to have it, he enforces that. After that, he approves plans, and then after that, he just examines the house that he builds on. He doesn't get involved in any planning at all. And I think that's what you guys are saying, that we don't need to, he's doing what he's doing, he's just fine doing that, what he does. He really shouldn't be involved in any of the planning. He doesn't have the time to do any of the planning.
No.
And he doesn't have the expertise. He's just a zoning enforcement officer, and he's, and the building stuff you were referencing, nothing the planning board could do once it gets to the building department. It's 100% him to enforce all of that, but he's good the way he is, I think, right now.
So Ken, do you think the planning board could go and be building commissioners?
No. No, you have to, the book is that thick for you to understand how to.
I got that book.
I agree.
That's why I'm saying I can just kill it to him real quick. You don't want to do it, he doesn't want to do it, let's end it, right?
Thank you,
I
Ken.
got that book, and it's.
You got that book, Dennis, yeah, you know, the big blue book, right, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ken. All right. Rob, do you want to say anything else?
I'm good.
So, David?
So I think I understand the concept that if we have a form-based building code and things are laid out very strictly about what can be done, basically, I think you're suggesting that the building inspector can go and say, you'd say, hey, we're gonna build some structure, and it's going to conform to everything that's been pre-approved through the form-based building code, that they would have the authority to say, okay, you can do that. Because essentially, that's the code that they're going to go back to as you're building it to make sure you're doing it the way it's supposed to be done. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So they're already determining compliance with zoning.
Right.
Yes.
So it's sort of, yeah. And I think really the issue might be how large the project is or how small it is.
Yeah.
that-
I think
that we're
that's a good part of it.
That's making people uncomfortable. I don't know what that
Good.
correct
You guys-
size is, but,
Do you guys approve single homes on lots? Does that come to the planning board?
I couldn't recite to you what's by right off the top of my head in the zoning bylaw, but there are things that are by right. And one of them is the development of a single-family home on a conforming lot. Which is
But-
not, which is not anything, well, it's good. You have another question? Did you have any other questions?
no, just that I don't have just an objection with the basic concept of building inspector sort of, being handed plans, say, hey, this is what we're gonna build, this is the codes that was pre-approved by everything, and then being able to look at it and say, yes, that follows the rules, or it doesn't follow the rules, and then be able to go from there. So, just fundamentally, I don't have necessarily an issue with that. It's a matter of when that,
Yeah.
I think that
Yeah.
is the intent of the small project plan. It's that same sort of, idea that for something simple and straightforward, that's not planning, it's literally looking at the building to see if it conforms with the lot standards. It doesn't necessarily need to come to a planning board. And so it might really be about those thresholds and where we draw those lines.
So, good. I'm still thinking this over, So, this farm base, if we accept it, it's already what you can build. So, why do we need the building inspector or the commission? Because we already proved the thing. It still could come back to the planning board because we already proved the master plan. I don't know if it's a small project or a large project. I mean, if we already gave you the farm base, we're just going back, say, oh, yep, okay, that that's in this thing. I don't know why we need to,
Just like
we're supposed to be streamlining. You're adding more people to this thing. That's another thing that confuses me.
I think it's just, it's trying to use the same processes you already have in place, to a certain extent.
Yeah, but, all right.
So when you're at master plan level, it's high level. So just to go back to that drawing, so the drawing on the left, there's no engineering going behind that. There's, you don't have topo lines, you don't have, it's not an engineered drawing. You don't know exactly where the utilities are going in the road, or exactly what the road profile will be. It's not engineered yet. So this is getting that pre-blessing. It may be that when you come through a master plan that, someone wants to do one building and wants to split off a lot, and that lot already fronts a road that exists. Well, that's an A&R. So now, instead of just going and putting up a new house or a building, you then go through small project plan review. And that is one sort of process that could happen. So it's not that everything necessarily starts as a master plan.
So-
But if you're, in this case, for us, we have a large area that we are going to master plan.
All right. So another thing, I have a question. So every 10,000 square foot building, that's Cape Cod Commission. So why wouldn't you keep all the buildings under 10,000, so you're not keep on going to Cape Cod Commission? I mean,
That's a, we need to talk to the Cape Cod Commission,
to see what they knew.
about that, because
I mean, you could
typically
be
you
triggering
can't
four buildings going.
right, you can't split up a project so it doesn't trigger the Cape Cod
Yeah.
Commission. If it's somehow linked by something underneath, like the same owner or
Right,
the
the
same
same
master
owner, yeah.
plan, so we need to talk to them about that.
Well, I was getting that too, so they could keep it at, well, right now you have the 10,000 for the small. They keep every building at 10,000, the planning board wouldn't see, except for that master plan.
So Evan, can you?
I still gotta think of this.
Yeah. can you go to
Well, I
Evan?
mean, just to be
Yep,
clear.
oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so, go
I-
ahead, Evan, I
I'm
recognize you.
fairly confident the way projects are reviewed now in town is the 10,000 square foot threshold, with the exception of things like cell towers and, projects of more significant impact that are defined in the zoning bylaws. So not much differs here, but Dennis, you also asked the question about why go to the building, why not come back to the planning board? If, for projects less than 10,000 square feet, why go to the building commissioner? And I would argue it's for efficiency's sake. What makes projects so expensive often is the permitting timeline. So if we can make sure that outcomes remain positive and within the vision of the planning board, then you're gonna have development that is theoretically gonna be significantly improved because costs are gonna be going down and timelines are gonna be better.
How much does timeline really factor in that? Because I think.
It's huge. It's huge.
No, I think the
everything.
big cost is the engineering and the professional work, and you're still gonna have to do that.
It's the time coming to meetings as well. It is definitely cumulative and iterative plans and revisions.
And I say that most of the time, that's because people come to us and their plans aren't done.
But now you're putting
but
I
double
mean,
this is a
I've done this for
nationwide
12
issue.
years.
put double
Poor
the
Ken's
work.
been through it a million times.
You put double the work on the building commission now. He's planning and going and enforcing the zoning and the planning that he just did.
So Dennis, we've heard you clearly. So
Okay.
we're definitely going to take that information and discuss
you.
within the team. So,
Just wanna go back to Evan, is there anything else?
sure.
No, I just
And I
wanted
have
to make
something
those
in
2
response to
points.
him,
I
too.
like what you said too, Evan, I gotta think about.
Thank you, Dennis.
So there's one other thing that I think while we're on this master plan slide that I'd like to point out. The majority of the streets in that example master plan don't exist.
No.
So if someone were coming forward to build buildings, whether they're under 10,000 or more than 10,000, and it's part of improvements that include creating frontage by means of the street, then that's coming through planning board, it's subdivision.
All right, that being that subdivision,
Yep.
because this is, all right.
Yep, and so you could do both together. You can do your, so if somebody were ready to actually construct the buildings and the architecture were completed at the time that the subdivision plan was prepared, both of those things could come through at the same time.
Can you say that again, Vanessa?
If you are preparing a subdivision plan and you are ready to submit your architectural drawings because you're ready to construct buildings, you could have both those plans come forward at the same time. So it's streamlining that. It's how it is now, I believe, in your ordinances. It's how this ordinance has been written as well. So you can do both of those things together.
Hey, Charlie.
It's not
I'm s-
always, by
I'm
the way,
still
that
on
people are
small
ready to
project
build.
If the only thing that the building inspector or building commissioner was looking at was buildings that met the code and that were on a piece of property that had been developed with the site improvements in place, I would have no problem with it. But to suggest in the applicability that not only does he review new buildings, accessory buildings, building renovations, additions to building components, but he also reviews site improvements. At what point were the site improvements to be done on a small project plan?
So it would be like grass,
Now, I'm not talking,
grading,
any site
landscaping
improvements
walls,
covers a lot more than
driveway.
grass. It includes
Drainage.
utilities,
Yep.
it includes stormwater, it includes paving, it includes landscaping, and all of the stuff that goes on around that building. So are you asking him to review and approve all of that as well? Or at what point does that
So if
get
you go
approved?
back to, hold one second, if you go back to subdivision, the installation of utility services,
We're talking about a plan now that is of a 10,000 square foot lot or a 10,000 square foot building. We're not talking about the subdivision
yes,
street.
I know, but you said it's installation of utility services. If you're talking about running a pipe to that building or property, is that what you're saying? When you say site improvements, I need you to be very clear what kind you're thinking of.
Well, that's what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, you gotta be
Okay.
clear.
Because
Well,
site improvements
I'm clearly
includes a
telling
lot of
you
stuff.
that could be grading of a site, it could be installation of landscaping, it could be installation of stormwater rain gardens, it could be installation of electrical.
All right,
That's
what,
within the actual site, the bounds of the property.
what qualifications does a building inspector have to improve a drainage facility, stormwater drainage facility?
Approve a drainage facility?
ma'am.
So if there's significant stormwater, there's a section of this ordinance that says, just like it does for all of you, that if you need outside review, that you can escrow funds.
This isn't up to outside review. This is strictly under the building inspector. This is what you're saying.
What I'm saying is that in the review of projects, if you need third-party review, that you can get that for you done.
But there's no threshold that makes and forces the building inspector to do that.
And if you
Well,
don't,
I guess I'm confused by, I guess what I'm hearing is that you don't think that the building inspector will
Take the place of the planning board.
follow the rules?
Nor
I'm not
is he
sure what I'm
necess-
hearing.
Nor
not
is he
qualified.
necessarily a qualified professional to do the things that are outside the code which he administers.
So
In
Charlie, I
addition-
think you're saying the same thing the rest of them have said, and we hear what you're saying.
I hope that I'm trying to emphasize the fact that you're putting in planning responsibilities as well as code enforcement in the hands of the building inspector, which is another level of bureaucracy that could be handled by the planning board as it does now. In addition to that, it says changes to a lot. What does that mean?
So if you decided that you have 10 parking spaces right now, and you'd like to remove 2 of those parking spaces, 3 of the parking spaces, that might be a change to a lot. If you decide that you want to grade it differently or install some kind of landscaping in the front yard, so those would be considered changes to a lot, because there are certain things in the standards of the code that we do and do not regulate.
So
So that's the catch-all for changes to a lot. If I
Well-
wanted to put a solar array outside in my yard, it says where I can and can't do that.
I think that in your applicability and in a lot of places in what you've written up, there is so much vague language and things that are not consistent with what is in the zoning bylaw right now for terminology, definitions, that this is going to become thoroughly confusing.
That's one
And
thing that.
until you work through all of the details of this and get it so that it's going to be workable for everybody, it's going to be awful.
You're just gonna end up going back to our review process that we have in the beginning. I'm telling you, there's nothing that's in our rules or regulations, you know.
But I'm
that
hearing
we're-
you say two very different things.
Oh,
So you're
okay.
talking about procedure, and then you're talking about clarity. And so we're here.
Hand in
I
hand.
don't think we're talking about two different things, I'm sorry.
So we would love for any recommendations that you have for specific places where you see where we're not being clear, and we would love to
told
work
you.
through those places.
That's not our,
But it is your job
it's
because
not my job
you are the
to
planning
rewrite
board,
this.
and we are here working
My
with you
comment
in
is that
cooperation.
I want to strike all of. If that's your comment back to us, that we have to point out what's missing.
No, we're asking for your
Your
recommended
comments,
changes.
my comment is to strike Article 7 and use our standing
Yeah.
review process. And I want to put a plug in to the people who haven't heard this. The planning board has submitted to the Board of Selectmen the mixed-use plan development bylaw, which keeps our already functioning and perfectly fine special permit review process with an option for this to have a master plan, have form-based code, and go forward by right. And I'd like to plant that seed for you guys, to really take that seriously. Because if we're gonna strike out, if we're never gonna approve Article 7, then you're just gonna go back to how we review things now, and that's already a bylaw under consideration for a town meeting, so. Charlie, do you have anything else?
Well, I'm just going back to the first page in this whole section 7 here, and just looking at things that I would pick out. The very first thing it talks about in general procedures is two things. It talks about a permitting authority, it talks about a review authority.
Yeah.
You gotta straighten out things like that, because you can't have confusing and conflicting requirements. If you go down to the review authority in table 7.1, it talks about a master plan, a subdivision plan, a large-scale project, a small-scale or the first three by the planning board, small-scale project, which can take anything up to, it said 10 acres.
Yeah.
All reviewed by the building inspector, a plan revision by the building inspector. If I'm an applicant looking at that and I'm saying plan revision, that could mean anything. A variance by the Board of Appeals, you've got that already in 40A. Land conveyance by the Board of Selectmen, where do you get that?
If you want to dispose of land, then the Board of Selectmen have to initiate that process.
This isn't property that is owned by a private individual?
This is an ordinance that is written not just for eventually all of this area. So if there is land that there's a desire to transfer to the town, we can't just transfer it without there being a conveyance procedure. We can't just give you a deed to something. There's procedure for
It's
it.
a specific
It's already
issue, a
written up
specific
somewhere.
item.
I mean, we already have
It's
policies
part of,
and
it's,
laws
it's
that-
here because what we gave you was an ordinance that worked for the entirety of the project area. So it is written with all of these pieces to it so that it could be an easy insertion. So if you don't like that it has land conveyance in here, we can look certainly at the existing language and perhaps take this out. So this is the helpful information that we need to hear from you, so we can make this as seamlessly integrating as possible. So if you like your existing language, then that we can use the existing language.
We don't have to
Yes.
go through all your comments
I
now.
was gonna put this away. If we can go back to the existing language, we won't have to bother reviewing this stuff.
Yeah, anyways, so Charlie, are you done for now, or? I mean,
I am
I think everybody's gonna have lots of comments in the future, but, go ahead,
I
Evan.
want to make one suggestion. If I'm hearing a lack of, an unwillingness to continue with this procedure, making edits in the code, what would the board be amenable to my taking a stab at going through line by line, perhaps coordinating with these individuals to propose? I listen to you guys, I do, very intently.
I'd like you to support the bylaw that we put in.
I cannot do that.
That's what I would like. So I'm not gonna assign you any work that would work in-
Just a suggestion, I
against
wanted
us.
to understand your
Thank you.
opinion.
All right, so I think we're at a bypass here.
Well, I think that, you know, it's actually, you know, recognized that we need more time to get through
Definitely.
this. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak?
Just hang on, say one more thing. Just-
Yeah, Ken, come on up.
Come on up, Kenny.
Tell us a joke, so it'll break the tension in the room.
You know what, I think, to get a little bit more familiar with what we do here, that's the thing, you know what? The building inspector should be just left alone and leave him out of everything. He's not a planning person. He's an enforcement officer, he looks at our buildings, that's what he does. So there was, in site improvements, I have to agree it's ambiguous. I think what they were talking with Charlie was really small stuff, but you gotta think that it's drainage easements and drainage calculations and all that. Well,
Somebody's
that
gonna
can't
look
be,
at this
that couldn't
code.
happen on a small lot, because if you had it, it wouldn't be a buildable lot. But that site improvements thing caused a lot of talk, and it's like, I don't know what site improvement is too, so I just, you know.
The thing of it is, the reason I bring these things up, and it may be nitpicking, but somebody comes in off the street and they go see Evan, and they say, I'd like a copy of the zoning bylaw
Yeah.
for form-based code. And they go through this stuff, and they see all these things. They're gonna make their own interpretation as to what those things mean, unless they're pretty specific.
And we have
And
no
that's where the
recourse.
issues come up.
Yeah, no, there's no question. This is some, you know, it changes to a lot. Any improvements up to 10 acres, it sounds like the building inspector's doing planning. He shouldn't be involved in any of that at all. He's good at what he does right now. You know, he doesn't have the time or the expertise to do it.
Thank you.
No.
But just want to make sure I understand. So the building inspector right now does or does not approve individual buildings on lots, including the hookups?
As I
to-
said before, you'd have to go through, and there are things that are by right, not by special permit or any type of special permit granting authority, such as the Board of Appeals or the Planning Board. There's definitely things that are by right, and we're fine with that.
Right, and so like if someone's building a house and they want to have, you know, connect to town water and they're running a line to the water main and they're adding, you know, other utilities on their site, that goes through the building inspector.
Yep.
Like you guys don't
I
see that.
believe so, a
that's
single-family
just
home that
single
doesn't
family.
need any relief from anything.
But the subdivision,
Yes.
that single-family
Yes.
home comes to the planning
Right.
board.
Absolutely.
Once we do the subdivision, then it's the building inspector that gives the permit for each
That's the
individual
same,
lot.
that's the same kind of process we're trying to get at here. So again, if,
But
No
you're
commercial
inserting,
property up to, no commercial building up to 10,000 square feet.
you're inserting the building inspector into the planning part.
right, so that's
of
where
the-
we were talking about the thresholds and
No
what's
thresholds.
the right threshold where it can go, continue to go to the building inspector
So
versus the
read
county.
our planning board and read our zoning bylaw and figure that out. If you come to me and say, you already allow this by right,
So you want it to stay the same?
but, right, exactly. And we're just gonna say, you don't need, by the time we're done with Article 7, you're not gonna need it, because it's gonna be our process that we follow now. I'm sorry, I think we've been pretty fair to property owners that come in front of us. Hopefully Ken agrees, maybe other people don't.
You
but-
sure can, we,
Yeah, I think we're pretty fair, and, you know, we're citizen planners, and we allow for public comment, and I'm a proponent of that. I think the public make good comments, and projects come out better when our butters come out.
So I
And
just want to
that's-
be clear that if I'm proposing a 250 square foot addition onto my commercial building, I'm coming to the planning board right now.
I don't know off the top of my head.
If it's under special permit, and if it would impact.
Pretty much
the-
everything is under special permit. C1, everything is special permit, planning review. So if I'm in the C1 and right now.
No, the mixed-use plan development bylaw.
Oh, I wasn't
Haven't read-
talking about.
You haven't read it. It
I
goes to
have.
by right.
But
So
I'm not
no.
talking about the future, I'm talking about right now. So if I'm in C1 and I want to do an addition to my commercial building, I want to do 500 square feet, am I coming to you
You're probably getting a modification for the special permit, yeah.
for one
If
that
you're
was
under
already
special permit.
existing? And I'm
You just
going to
had
wait
one with,
about 30 days for
an
that?
additional use
There's
added to
time.
the special
And
permit.
maybe more than one.
So
meeting.
that 500's,
If it's allowed by zoning,
Right.
right, might not even be allowed by zoning.
okay.
Well, just while we're here, does anyone else have any specific questions or comments that would be useful for us to know at this time? Other sections? That chapter?
Think about that building inspector.
Well, we are, and that's why I posed the question back to you. If, I would like you to just to think perhaps that there may be a different tiered approval process that doesn't bring everything to the planning board where you have to queue up for a 30-day process to get here.
You show
You
me
know,
the list that's
simple-
by right now in our zoning bylaw.
Sorry, say that again?
Show us the list that's by right now in our zoning bylaw, and let's take it from there. There's a whole slew of things that I've asked for that Russell has an email on.
Is this a separate thing, though? So does that link to what you're asking me right now about showing you what's by right?
It's okay, I don't have to finish that sentence.
Well, I just want to know
No,
that
It's okay.
I make my notes, and if there's additional things
No,
that we
it's
need to
okay.
ask him to do.
We're not, we're not gonna change our thing on the building inspector, no matter which way you come across the threshold.
Yep.
Okay, so you hear where we are,
Yep.
no matter how many times you say different ways about it.
No, I get that.
I
I
know
hear
I'm
that very
not.
clearly. I'm just asking if there's an alternative, but maybe.
Maybe you could come back with an alternative.
I posed one. I think it should be three-person staff personally, because in my past experiences wearing my municipal hat, I used to do project review as a staff approval for buildings up to 5,000 square feet, just as a staff person. So when we shifted to form-based coding in that town that I was managing, we assigned a consolidated review committee to do the work so that.
What town was that?
It was in Yarmouth, Maine. It's a small town.
Yep, I know
On the
it.
coast. We have shoreland issues too, and water quality issues. And so we had a town engineer, a public works guy, a
Sounds like plan
code
review.
person who was our building inspector. They wore both hats. And the police and fire chief. And all of us, because we were already doing staff approvals, we were already doing project approvals and preparing reports for our boards. Our board said, geez, this makes perfect sense. You're already doing all this work, simple projects. You go ahead and continue doing what you do. And so that was our shift. But up until then, a lot of projects that were small, I was reviewing as the town planner and signing off on, but I was still getting the reports from all the other staff because I needed to make sure my fire guy was good with things and my police guy was good with things. So so this is not an uncommon thing to think about, that there may be a small project bucket and these thresholds might not be the right ones.
Right,
And
right.
that's for, I think, for you guys to think about and we'll think about, and we should continue talking.
Yeah, well, definitely. I think, you know,
All right, thank you.
Okay, so, want to take a 5-minute break?
sure.
Okay.
I think we gotta ask.
We're gonna take a 5-minute recess, I'm sorry, everybody was waiting for the items on the agenda. about requesting some sort of support from the Board of Selectmen for a consultant for the planning board. I had drafted that up as a memo, part of a memo, having to do with requesting the Board of Selectmen put the form-based code by Mashpee Commons off to another town meeting. So I'm going to hold off on that memo, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the meeting packet for next time, so we can look at it and approve the language and send it to the Board of Selectmen. So I haven't forgotten about getting technical access to a consultant or a special counsel for this. But I don't want to give out the whole memo. I don't even have it with me right now, until that time. Anyways, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to the item about Mass General Law, Chapter 40, and our charter. And the reason why I put this on here is because we see that we have 3 more bylaws on the agenda to look at today. And I've been thinking about this because in past years, this isn't how the process has worked. The town planner hasn't submitted the bylaws without them coming to the planning board. The town planner never submitted bylaws. They were always submitted by the planning board in some aspect. So I looked up in Chapter 40A about how bylaws are changed. And in there, it says that the proposal may be initiated by a city council, Board of Selectmen, zoning board, an individual who owns land that may be, that it would be affected by the proposal. That's why I asked Mashpee Commons about that piece. 10 or more registered voters for an annual town meeting, or 100 or more registered voters for a special town meeting, 10 registered voters in a city, a planning board, a regional planning agency, or a method provided by the municipal charter. So I looked through the municipal charter, and I can't find anything in there about the town planner submitting a bylaw to the Board of Selectmen for inclusion on a town meeting warrant. So I was just wondering, Evan, how did you come about this process?
Well, let's go through all 3. The selectmen, after discussions through, we'll start with the ADU. That came about just due to the demand for the unit, so start there. There was interest from community and members of the Board of Selectmen. It was suggested I draft it, so I did and submitted for their consideration. I was not ever warned that my submission would be non-compliant or illegal. And with that, the Board of Selectmen could take the article and place it on the warrant.
It's true, that's true.
And so my thought was, post-submission, this would inevitably be legally required to come back to the planning board for review. So I don't understand the issue.
I don't think it's been submitted legally. It hasn't been submitted in compliance with our charter and, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A.
So, I'll funnel that to Attorney Costello, but I'm fairly certain the Board of Selectmen control the warrant no matter what. So I understand if there are issues here that need to be clarified, and I wholeheartedly wish to do so.
But you're usurping the planning board.
Mary, I have no authority here. I just wrote
Right,
language.
but you've
No.
submitted something for the town meeting warrant on a zoning bylaw, and you didn't come to us first.
Mary, it is
So
legally
I'm very-
required to come back to the planning board for review. I would never usurp your authority. I wrote language for consideration.
Yeah.
Do not
These
place
things,
that
I
language
looked-
to the community to consider. That's absurd.
I looked at past years. We usually start this 6 months in advance. We vote on it to submit it. It's important that the planning board maintains its role as an elected body.
How does this alter your role?
Because now I have until September 11th to look at these. And I'm not comfortable with going against what's in Chapter 48 in our charter and what is the term that the Board of Selectmen used the other day? Giving up their authority on things.
The authority has not disappeared. This is just a proposal for town meeting consideration that you may or may not endorse. So how am I stripping this board of authority? You might all say, this is no good. That's you're empowered and entitled to that opinion and designation. I don't understand
But
how I
usually-
could alter that.
Usually having,
I have no capacity to do that.
I would like you to withdraw them.
I will discuss it with town council and the town manager.
I
I'll take
have
it
to
under
let you know
advisement.
that I did email Rodney Collins and asked him to have these withdrawn. Because he gave me this nice speech today about how things haven't been running that great. By email, it wasn't a speech. And really being supportive of the planning board, and in no way you trying to usurp the planning board. So I wrote right back to him saying, good, because I have a problem.
I
Because
incessantly
feel
disagree with your choice of the word usurp.
It was a word
is-
that I picked up from Rodney Collins, and I like it. I said, yeah, I'm gonna call you on that, Rodney. I'm gonna ask you to help us out so that we're not
You are
in
sending
that
a very
position.
poor message to the community by saying, I am trying to do this. I would never do that.
no, yeah. What usually happens is, the planner and stuff.
Understood.
We
That
discuss
procedure
it.
was never identified to me,
And
Dennis, I
then
apologize.
we send it on to the selectmen and stuff. It should come out of the planning board, any planning thing. The selectmen have a right to put any zone articles or any changes they want on it, you know.
I did not mean to.
No, I
incent-
know you didn't.
This
You're
is
just doing
crazy.
your job.
I'm doing the
You were
best I can.
told,
It's
you know.
becoming extraordinarily challenging.
But it'd be nice if you came to the planning board with them things and say, here's what I'm doing, here's the new articles, I'm gonna submit it to the selectmen, then we have our public hearing. Because we still have the public hearing on these articles.
It doesn't change.
No, I know, but
No, but I don't think, I don't think, I have some, I'm not happy with how this is going. And
Feels
this whole
arbitrary.
conversation about
Feels like a
Mashpee Commons and the planning board being kept out of the process has been on top of our agenda for the last,
It
like,
feels like it's only been
two-
your narrative,
two-
Chairman.
2 months. Well, I'm the one that's standing up for the planning board. And, right, people are starting to, I'm sure their personal attacks are gonna start, But it's my job as the chair, to protect this board from that kind of stuff, and.
My job to protect
it's-
this town, and that's all I'm trying to do, and I know you're trying to do the same thing.
Can I, just for a minute, there's an established order in which we've done things for a long time. It may not be.
I understand that.
No, hang on. It may not be strictly laid out in law exactly how things are done, but there's been an established order of doing things that, that we've come to use. And when that is changed without knowledge to anybody else, could be totally by accident, but when somebody comes in or some group decides to change the order, the usual order of operations in something, it's upsetting.
I understand that.
Okay, and most of what happens in a town and a democracy is based on sort of an established order of doing things. It's not about what's strictly legal to do and what I can strictly get away with. I'm not accusing you of
I
anything.
understand, if I may.
But I'm just saying that's how things get perceived, and so we want to keep with the established order that's worked for us in the past.
I wrote each of you a letter asking for criticism, constructive criticism, because I'm learning here. I'm new on this board, and I need your help. I apologize that I did not identify the correct procedure, but I would never try and usurp the authority of this board.
I'm not accusing you. of
That
anything.
is absurd,
I
Janet.
need to be strong on this, because I need you to withdraw them. I'm sorry, but I need you to withdraw.
I'm not gonna comment any further. I will take it under advisement.
yeah, that's,
So I'm gonna table the rest of the zoning. No, I'm gonna table it.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am, I'm going to table the item.
I requested to be put on the agenda and was denied to speak on this matter. Now it's being tabled. We've been here for 3 hours. I would like an opportunity to.
I'm sorry, Stephanie Cox, I'm going to table it. This is an illegal procedure. We're not in compliance of our charter or Chapter 40A.
Yet I tried to reach you before the deadline to submit.
You asked me
you gotta
a
come up.
week ago
You gotta speak.
if you could come and speak to us, and what did I say? I said no. So you're here from some information that I don't have. You do acknowledge that I did tell you no?
Yes, because I wouldn't agree to the changes that you wanted made.
I said you couldn't come here unless you agreed to talk about affordable housing. So that's a no. As far as I know, it was a no.
And I tried tracking you down prior to that.
Well,
Prior to
that's,
the
that's,
July 9th deadline.
that's,
So we could talk about accessory dwellings, and I think what we're missing in all of this is the housing situation that is impacting everyday residents of Mashpee, and we have an opportunity to discuss a way to add to the supply of housing. And I'm here, and the CEO of the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce is here to talk about the need for that. So even if the board decides to table this for Springtown meeting, I still think that it would be great for you all to have an opportunity to hear about this effort that's going on. It's happened past in Falmouth, in Truro, and about 5 or 6 other towns are looking at it for Fall Town meeting. I'd just like an opportunity to tell you all about it.
I'm sorry, Stephanie, but I'm gonna say no. I'm the chair. I'm putting my foot down. I've had to put my foot down a lot lately. I'm not your enemy either, but I did say I was gonna table the thing. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, that's your decision then.
Ken, I better not, because it's just gonna get me going again. No, I know.
But I won't, I respect it.
I know.
I respect it, yeah.
Okay.
That was the next on the agenda.
I don't have it. All right, so, new business, none. Aquay Highlands, testimony regarding contamination of catch basins after heavy rainfall. Hi, Ernie.
Ernie Virgilio, 7 Castle Drive. Unbelievable. The words were taken right out of my mouth tonight so many times. But I'm going to tell you this. You've seen my email. You have seen the pictures I have sent you. You have heard from me for 2 years. Now, you must inform me if you have enforcement, because it's simply amazing that contractors like myself, developers in this town, follow the letter of the law. Mr. Rowley comes to our site, we do, and it's fine with me, and I'm sure other developers to do exactly and proceed precisely the way a project should be managed in compliance. This project is out of compliance. It is in non-compliant. It has gone on forever and ever, and I'm at wit's end with it. I want to know, do you have enforcement rights? Because if you tell me you don't, then who has? Because then I'm going to go to the selectmen. I would have no choice. What are they going to tell me? They have no enforcement rights for a developer that continues to do non-compliance work? Look it.
Ernie, can I ask you?
This is a problem. How many times have I come here and your final word has been, bring him in? Yeah, bring him in, bring the developer in. I don't want to name anybody. And he doesn't show. I sit here, sorry, the developer doesn't show. And what do I get? Oh, well, you know what? I'm sorry, folks. I can't deal with this anymore. I'm 74 years old. Go look around my house. Ask Dennis. My wife's a retired florist. She lives to make her surroundings around her home look beautiful. Go look at the front of my yard. It's unacceptable.
It's a mess.
If you can't do something, tell me. I want it in writing.
Okay.
Because the next time I come before this panel, board, committee, commission, selectmen, whatever you want to call it, this whole town, it will be with legal representation.
Okay.
Because I'm stressed out. And the physical abuse is, mental abuse is done.
Here, I might be able to help you out on that.
Yeah, Ernie, maybe just don't leave, because I think I was going to ask Charlie some questions, and you don't have to go to the podium again, and I apologize that this has been so long.
When on this particular matter, I happened to review the minutes when the developer was with you, I think it was the last meeting. And it was brought up about this particular area. And I had asked that additional stormwater
Bales.
protection facilities, hay bales, be put around that area. And he acknowledged that he would do it. I happened to be in town yesterday, so I took a ride down there to see if there was any change, and there was nothing. With respect to what can you do, I just looked up in the subdivision control law, this is a part of a subdivision approval plan, that this, section 81W does say that upon your own motion, there are other provisions for it, but on your own motion, you can make a determination that he's not in compliance, and you can actually rescind the approval of the subdivision. You do a public hearing process, which means he and the neighbors get notice. You go through exactly the same process. I'm not suggesting that it should be rescinded. All I'm saying is that puts him on notice that you could hold a public hearing on it and get these things addressed. There's no reason for that.
No.
The drainage area is complete with the exception of the loam and seed and dressing it up the way that it should be shown finely done. There is absolutely no reason why that developer should not complete that. There's going to be no more work done in this area with the exception of the top course of pavement and finishing off the unpaved portion of the road between here and where his lots begin. So there's no reason why he should leave anyone who's in a butter to this with this sort of a mess.
So what steps do we take to have a public hearing on
You
it?
could, under the subdivision control laws, section 81W, under your own motion, vote to hold a public hearing to rescind the approval, or modify the approval, or do anything else you want. But it would mean that he would get notice, the abutters would get notice, you would hold a public hearing just the way that you do when the subdivision is first presented you to, for approval. So you have the authority to do that. You have to, I think, in this particular case, make a finding that he's not in compliance with the performance standards that are normally accepted when you do a plan like this. I would have to review the terms of the special permit. Whether or not it would be considered in violation of that, I can't tell you. But this portion of the project was definitely subdivision.
Yeah.
And it was a part of the approved plans under Chapter 41, which is a subdivision control law, which you have the authority to administer. So under Section 81W, it's pretty clear. You have that authority.
So do you want to send Charlie out to do an investigation to see if we can, if there's a violation of the,
Well, I know there's a violation, I would think, but.
It's a case,
he would have to, we would have to get a report,
All right.
you know,
I would be happy to write a
documenting-
report. I'm not sure that you can really call it a violation because there was nothing in the conditions
time.
that said you had to do it within X number of days or it automatically is rescinded. However, it doesn't mean that he shouldn't do due diligence to do the project in a proper
Can
manner.
we write him a letter too, though, and tell him?
That we're sending Charlie out to start the process?
Or otherwise, we're gonna take other steps to rescind this special permit or something, you know? And I'd like to see a time set on this. You know, we want this done within the next 3 weeks or 2 weeks. Because I don't know if you've been by it, it's a mess in front of his house. It looks like a big sand pit.
You could modify the subdivision to put a stipulation of time on it, and that's how you would do it.
Yeah.
Would be through the approval process of the public hearing.
Yeah, so maybe we can,
So Ernie, if we had a public hearing, would you come?
Absolutely. You know, I'm sorry I go emotional, but
no,
No.
especially Gloria loves planting stuff.
I'll come with him.
but I just, you know, I build these things. It's not something you can start and forget. You have to finish this type of a project, or it doesn't work. Yes, it looks horrible.
So, Evan, do you want to see if we can get some time with town council on how to proceed with this?
I can do that. I spoke with town council today about the mixed-use plan development and form-based code. I could switch that conversation since you want to pursue a different route.
Yeah. And do you want to authorize Charlie going out there and
Yeah.
starting the,
Make a motion, we
the field
authorize
work?
Charlie to go out there and do an inspection and write up a report.
Your second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So sorry we didn't do this earlier.
I understand.
Well, he said he was gonna take care of it last meeting. He said he was gonna put the
Yeah,
bales up.
he stood right before you and said that he put the hay bales up,
Yeah.
and it's been, what, 3 weeks now?
Yeah, I went by every day I go by, but at least once a week I drive through the whole thing to see what's happening.
Is it okay? Oh, can you come up to the podium? I'm sorry, just,
Seems like it needs a riffle in front of that.
Engineer on record, isn't it in the process that the engineer on record is responsible to review the work as, in construction? And make sure that the contractor's doing the work correctly, or calls you and you verify things are right, or, I mean, we work together, it's so simple. Charlie, did I do this right? No, okay, I'll fix it. I mean, it's no problem.
It's been the practice for as long as I've been here, Ernie, that there are very few times when the actual engineer is out there. The only, the recent one that I know of has been an exception to that, has been Laurentide, where representatives from BSC were out there from time to time. Typically, on a subdivision street, except for the laying out, you very rarely see an engineer go back out there to confirm that work. That's what I go out there to do, to make sure it's in compliance with the plan.
Yeah.
I would think, though, that
and I
it would be in his best interest to assure everybody that it is in compliance with the plan, because he's ultimately responsible for it when it comes to the design and the operation of it. But in terms of the inspection, I can't remember where any sort of an approval has included language that says that he has to go out there.
Well,
If he does it, it's on his own.
the reason why I asked that question is when I look at the drawings and I go out there and I take my measurements and my my judgment of what is being built and being completed, I don't see the proper locations for the runoff, the width of the runoff, the length of the runoff, the quarry rock breaks for the water to flow to. I mean, there's none of that there.
Well, typically, you would see that done as a part of the finished product, and that's why I'm saying that there's no reason why he shouldn't go out there and finish this section of it, because it's the only thing to do. It's not like you're waiting for some other portion of the project to be done to get this piece of it finished. It could be. There's no question about that. But to put something temporary in there is okay, so long as you manage it in other ways. And part of that was the added hay bales that I had requested at the last meeting, which he's acknowledged he would do, and he hasn't done it.
No.
So in terms of that, I think that is sufficient reason for you to do something to enforce it and to perhaps put a time limit on it and say, you must get it done.
And I mean, control of the flow itself.
Yep.
I mean, the berms have got to be there unless, the hay bales, but how long can you have hay bales there?
I know.
So, I mean, it's really a project within itself that needs to be completed.
And it's not like it's a big one either.
I mean,
It could
really.
get done real quick.
One day it'll be done, maybe two.
Thank you.
All right, so we got a plan going though, right, Charlie, gonna go up there?
right, so Charlie's gonna do that. Evan's
Yes.
gonna contact town council. What I specifically need help with is is drafting the letter to the developer and letting the developer know we've started this process. The other thing is, he did agree to put hay bales in there at our meeting, our last meeting in July 18th. And it's because of that and because of these photos that we're initiating the process.
Understood.
So hopefully that can get out sooner than, scheduling a public hearing and all that, and hopefully that will just motivate him and fix it, but we're not gonna stop and wait for him, we're gonna proceed.
So Charlie, that excess runoff material, that'll be basically removed and sand replaced.
It will, that's only temporary, and it doesn't comply fully with the plan yet, Ernie.
Okay,
It does
thanks.
not.
All right,
No.
thank you.
Yeah. Mary, if you'd like to sort of help this along, based on my experience out there and what knowledge I have on it, I'd be willing to draft, just a draft letter.
Yep.
That both you and Evan could look at. You could run it by town council
That'd be
to see
great.
if he thinks it's all right.
Thank you.
Might help out.
Thank you, Charlie,
Okay.
Even better.
and thank you, board.
Okay.
That will include recommendations in the report?
Yes.
As to how to get it up to compliance?
I can either put that in a separate report, or I can put it in the letter, whichever the board would prefer. I can do the report separately if you'd like.
Yeah, it'll be, the letter will go out quicker.
Yeah.
Right, it'll be a draft,
Right.
kind of
Yeah.
review of conditions, and then he'll continue on, as though we were gonna have a special permit, I wrote it down, under Chapter 81W, right? And that's gonna have to be a more formal report with photographs and all sorts of stuff and analysis.
I'll take my own photographs as well as we can incorporate these that you already have.
Yeah. Sound good, David? Yep. Okay. All right, onward, thank you. Wind chime special permit review.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, honorable members of the planning board. My name is Dave Bennett from Bennett Environmental. My company is the wastewater treatment system operator. We've been asked by the board of directors to enter into these discussions with the planning board relative to some provisions within the special permit to either seek modification or otherwise get clarification to make the decision to seek modification. I had submitted through Evan, dated July 26th, a package which I hope that you have in your possession.
I do.
Okay. So I'm reading from the front cover. This was a follow-up to the previous meeting where you had asked for specific information, although it was very late in the evening. I took note of that, so it says we're providing the attached supporting documentation as accompanying a cover letter, a letter that was prepared by Joseph Mooney as the chairman of the board of directors for Wind Chime, to use the information to seek the release of the escrowed funds for the slated wastewater treatment system improvements, and to eliminate, I'll give you a moment to find the package.
So I have a letter that looks like this,
That's all I got to that.
plus,
Also a fat chunk and includes a special permit with this.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
so you're
good.
reading something I don't have, but anyways.
I don't have extra copies, but you can have my copy.
Are you reading your letter?
Excuse me?
Reading the letter produced?
I'm reading the transmittal form, the remarks under the transmittal form that outline why I'm here tonight. And it was to have the escrowed funds that are framed in the special permit dedicated to the upgrade of the sewage treatment plant released, and to strike the requirement to replenish those funds based on the redundancy of another special account called a financial assurance mechanism that the state DEP regulates for that same purpose. So that's a redundant requirement. So I'd like to have the release of the funds, and I'd like the planning board to determine whether or not that can be done and what the mechanism for that release would be. and to determine whether or not you need that escrow fund replenished under the duplicative fund that's established by the state, and to seek out, to modify the special permit requirements for the extensive environmental monitoring program that is framed in the special permit, and to otherwise reduce it to once a year rather than 4 times a year that has been conducted since 1999. Or in the special permit, it says you can make a contribution to another entity, which is unnamed, to do what I think would make more sense, to have a regional plan in effect. Because in accordance to your own wastewater management plan or the needs assessment, Windchime itself has a very nominal contribution to the overall impact on the Mashpee River. And I think by only evaluating that, the larger picture that's essential to making policy decisions is not being served. In other words, I think that there's a pile of information that's not being utilized.
So
Then-
it's the
then the
same,
third-
it's the same testing sites, just once a year instead of 4 times a year.
Right, and the DEP requires us to do quarterly groundwater monitoring, which would not change. It's the piezometers that we have at the edge of the marsh, or the edge of the banks of the BVW on the Mashpee River, and the surface water sampling stations, and a macroinvertebrate evaluation that I think those could be waived or reduced such that a contribution in a similar amount of money that's expended for information that's not being utilized to be utilized in a better capacity. So in the package that I gave you a copy of the escrow fund. That was given to Windchime from the town. It's $166,000. I gave you the financial assurance mechanism regulations. I then made the copy of the special permit and highlighted those sections where they reside in the special permit to suggest that there might be some language that either myself or you might reconsider in the context of this. Mr. Mooney's plan, a letter, and a copy of the groundwater, the plan from the groundwater sampling report that showed the locations of the surface water stations, and the commingled plume that we share with Mashpee Commons. So we have a 40,000 gallon permit, they have a 180,000 gallon permit. They essentially discharge within 100 or 200 feet of each other. They're not equidistant, but our plant is about 500 feet from the Mashpee River. Their plant, or their leach fields, are about 600 feet from the Mashpee River. It seems to us that Windchime is towing a large part of this, which is disproportional to the environmental impact, and/or the objective that I think the special permit is trying to reach. And that's the comprehensive evaluation to remedy the situation that's here. That's the impact of the Mashpee River and the Pompanesett Bay.
So like, in theory, I'm really happy about doing this plan, following this plan you put forth to us. Now we have to think about the legality and the proper process to go about that. So, you know, so I think Evan might have something to say on this.
I met with Craig May and the treasurer. It's a simple performance bond. I have the form here. It has the covenant attached to it. The board can take a vote to release as little or as many funds that are available in the account, as long as they're expended towards the purpose of the stipulation within the special permit. So the board can vote to release all $166,000 for the maintenance of the wastewater treatment.
Through the chair,
As long as the board determines it's, you know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt anybody. Through the chair, I'm not, I think we're working towards a request for a modification of the special permit
Yes.
here.
Yes.
And I'd like to use this meeting as a public hearing that was advertised as such to, if that's what the board would like me to do, I'd like to entertain that with my client. It's something that I think should be done. I think from a scientific standpoint, it makes all the sense in the world. I don't think it does. I don't think it does. I think it actually furthers the cause, which is the underlying element of the special permit here. And that's to protect the Mashpee River, okay? So if that is the case, then I wanted to request a waiver because I'm not gonna be doing any lighting, I'm not gonna be doing any roadways, I'm not gonna be doing anything other than requesting a modification to the language that's in there that would outline these things that we've been talking about.
Just because it wasn't put in the agenda that way, we really can't. Because it should have fallen under special permits. But let's get back to the escrow piece, the money piece. Because I think that we can do that, provided I find in the special permit, the bit about the escrow. So I got these, I have not read these. We got them, Evan's been very busy. We got them as PDFs tomorrow
I appreciate that. from
at
attending the
4:30.
last two meetings.
So this was not a packet, I'm sorry. I did read yours, Ken, but I didn't read this. So where in this special permit or special permit modification does it talk about the escrow?
Well, there is actually 3 escrow funds that it appears to talk about. And I highlighted the area, can I use this to put something down?
Yes, absolutely. Just bring the mic stand over with you if you are gonna talk from there.
There is a provision in here, excuse me, there is a provision in here that specifically says, in order to maintain the objective to be somewhere between, what I understand now is 5 and 10 from reading the special permit regulations.
Must be Exhibit C. Wastewater treatment monitoring plan. I don't,
Well, that's the monitoring plan. I think the performance on the 5 parts per million,
you know what I'm looking for, right? The
Yeah.
bit about the, well, where is it?
You're looking for the bit about the escrow or the 5 parts per million requirement?
The escrow.
I didn't get there yet.
all right, so I'm looking on what would be section 9, standards and enforcement, on page 5, which is recorded as page 242.
So on the top, it will say page 2. All right, thank you.
And I will read this from the second paragraph, just to give you a spot. To secure the provisions of this special permit agreement, the applicant agrees to post a performance bond in the form of a fund of $125,000 payable to the town of Mashpee, to be used expressly for the purpose of improving the level of sewage treatment at Windchime Point Plant.
All right, and it is to be used only if the applicant defaults on the liability to improve the level of sewer treatment at Windchime Plant. So for us to release the money, we're gonna have to modify the special permit.
And it sounds like, is that a cash amount that's in there, 125,000?
It's now 160.
Yeah, it's going in
160,
interest.
all right. But the next paragraph that Mary read said that it would be used only in the
Yeah.
event that the owner defaulted
Yeah.
in the improvements that were necessary, so they affected that.
So
That-
I'm all for changing that so that we can release it.
Well, I think,
There is something, Charlie, that
Yes.
says, in the special permit, that says the applicant shall, prior to the commencement of construction pursuant to this modification, deliver to the town of Mashpee a performance bond in the amount of $125,000, which bond shall secure the applicant's ability to upgrade or to improve the waste treatment
There's
plant.
three mentions of escrow funds, and some of them are confusing or conflicting. So I thank you, Joe, that was really the part that I wanted to pull out of the special
Yeah,
permit.
that's
So that's
in
on a page 12,
12,
later
okay.
on in the packet.
it would seem that if that cash is there, if they produced a performance bond in the amount of a cash deposit, you could perhaps substitute a regular performance bond, which is a document that is prepared by an insurance company that says that in the event of default, that they will pay X number of dollars for the improvements, and you could have it read that amount. You would still have the protection, because in the event that they default, then you could call in the performance bond. The insurance company would be responsible for making the improvements in exchange for giving back the actual cash. That would be similar to what you would do with the subdivision road. If somebody put up a cash security for subdivision road construction and they wanted to exchange it for like a tri-party agreement, you could do that. Same sort of thing. It might be appropriate for town council to approve that because of the language, but it would seem that you could do it.
Well, we got something else going here, is that the state, we
Right.
had the, Windchime gave,
All sewage treatment plants that have groundwater discharge permits
yeah,
are required to have a financial assurance mechanism. So you've got duplicative requirements that are framed in this special permit, and I'm trying to seek the release of those funds to upgrade the plant, to increase the performance, which is the underlying
yeah.
reason for this.
Point of order.
And to waive the replenishment of that account based on a redundant fund that is monitored by the state and which is available for the same purpose.
Yeah, the state has an equal amount of money.
I understand that, but what the
Evan,
benefit
wait.
of the bond would be that the bond costs you peanuts in terms of cost.
So
So-
the chair has to recognize Evan. Go ahead, Evan.
Would it not be, Joe, you're a resident of Windchime?
Yeah.
Should you not recuse yourself in a modification decision regarding the Windchime development?
So with respect to a conflict of interest or owning a property that's under discussion or abutting it, you are correct to remind Joe of his responsibility. It's up to Joe to do that or not. I personally would leave the room, but it is up to you. We can't force you to leave the room.
No, I'm gonna stay, but I
Other thing
don't-
you can do is you can declare your relationship to the Board of Selectmen, and,
Well, they're not.
right, you have to, there's a formal
There's a
process,
procedure
so,
through the state ethics
for example, if, I was in a butter, but it was, let's just say Mashpee Commons, and I was like, I would have to declare that to the Board of
I've
Selectmen and go
done
through that.
That abutment,
Yeah.
abutted things, and I have gone to actually the Secretary of State.
Right.
to,
So we'll duly note it,
Yeah.
that the town planner fulfilled his responsibility and noting that, and the chairman added to it,
Yeah.
but it's up to you.
Yeah, well, no, I'm gonna abstain from voting, but,
Discussion as well, Joe, I would be weary.
the what?
You don't want to put yourself in a compromising position. Right. So it's probably best you don't involve yourself in the conversation, is my advice to you. That's it.
So
David, you
I
make-
I mean, it is just a fact. I mean, if he's not making an opinion, there's a financial assurance mechanism that the state enforces. for the for a quarter of the total replacement cost of the system. That's the total replacement cost. Like if the atom bomb hit Mashpee, they would rebuild everything from scratch, including all the pipes, all the buildings, all the components, etc. So it's a redundant requirement that's harbored
Right.
in this special permit that I'm having this dialogue to determine, is the planning board amenable to review these under a waiver request for essentially all the performance with the exception of wastewater, such that we can, make suggestive language. I don't know how the procedure is here, if the applicant makes the suggestive language, or I bring this to your attention, we file a special permit, and you,
Special permit modification, right?
modification, and then you modify it.
So we typically modify, write the modifications our own. I think that if there was any need for comment on that, that would come from the town planner.
Make sure I understand the
Because
question.
you write special permit modifications for the board.
I write the decision based on the history of
Right.
the case.
So that's how this board works.
Okay.
If you want to suggest something, you're more than welcome to do so, the language, but
No, I think that
Yeah.
this clearly shows those areas and some of those, so some of the I think it should be considered like housekeeping.
I think that we should do two things at once, is to modify for you to submit the application to modify the special permit, and have on the agenda on that same night, the vote to release the funds. So if it gets modified in the way that you are proposing, the board could release the funds. I do want to look at the state statute that they're saying is a redundancy, so.
Well, that's a requirement under the groundwater discharge permit regulations, which is a state regulation. So any treatment plant facility that discharges their effluent into the ground gets this permit. And that's a regulation for any plant. So this is in addition to that. The thing I don't remember is whether there was another reason why they decided to include that redundant amount. It's not the same amount, but there was an additional amount that got written into the special permit. I don't see any reason why you can't release the funds, and you could probably do that without even a modification of the special permit if you exchange it for the bond, which is peanuts in terms of the cost of the bond. And it gets renewed on a regular basis, so it's always there. And the only thing you'd want to then consider the special permit modification on would be whether or not you still want measurements on the river 4 times a year.
Do you want to think about that?
That's an easier way.
I'm actually have given a lot of thought to this. I'm wondering if I should ask for a continuation,
Yeah.
Well,
so that this can be thoroughly reviewed, and then either come back for a further discussion, or through the town planner say, hey, Dave, we're gonna accept your waiver, we're gonna accept your special permit, we're writing something up, file the fees, to be heard.
So Dave, when, if you opt to pursue a modification, you can request the waivers within that application and
It
request
has
this.
to be at a public hearing, I was just
So
reading
once
that.
you apply, it'll kick off the process for me to initiate a public hearing and do the.
Well, we can
notice,
just
et cetera.
continue this one, can't we?
this isn't a
legal
public
public hearing.
hearing.
Oh, I don't, oh, okay, sorry.
Because there's been no application.
So that's the first step.
So the other thing we have to do is decide what kind of advertising, right?
For public hearing?
that, yeah, because isn't it if it's a minor modification, we don't do the abutters?
Well, that's, we gotta vote on
That's, yeah,
that.
if you would determine this is a major or minor modification, that would have an
I think it's
impact.
a.
The simple way to,
I don't think we need a public hearing. I mean, it's to benefit the Mashpee River and the wind charm, the condos. That's.
We don't really have that on the agenda, so this is what we
I
do.
frankly would like everybody to maybe spend a little bit of time between
Yeah.
this and the next meeting to review this. Because I don't wanna waste anybody's time. If you're not gonna, this isn't something that you're comfortable with, you know,
I'm comfortable, I mean.
we
Yeah.
can, you know, we can move on, because this is quite a procedure, and
So we'd like you to submit an official application to modify the special permit, as we've discussed.
okay.
At that meeting, and you schedule it as a public hearing, and at that meeting, we started off with a vote as to whether we think it needs,
Well, if we schedule a public hearing, it's I mean,
I don't mind, you know, to cover your bases, I can just do the 300-foot abutters and just cover all our bases, and if you would submit, maybe perhaps a letter to the chair requesting
That'd probably
what
be
you'd like to
better.
seek waiver from.
Okay.
Well, I think that, I think Mr. Mooney's letter, which I
Okay.
scripted for him,
Indicates
clearly states what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And again, those 3 points are release of the escrow, not have to fulfill it, although Charlie's suggestion that you have a performance bond is a less expensive, I really think it's redundant and it's not necessary. The second thing would be to decrease the environmental monitoring program by making decreasing it or making a contribution of similar funds to another, I don't know, the Friends of Mashpee River
Yeah.
or whoever they are, so that they can do a wider scope project. And then the third issue would be to, I think we've got the clarification on the 5 milligrams per liter. There was a reference to 3 milligrams per liter. That's in one of the phases of the needs analysis for the comprehensive wastewater plan, and quite frankly, I read that tonight while Mashpee Commons was presenting, and it really does, to the point that was made here at the last meeting, say that you really can't reliably make that standard on a regular basis without some Herculean efforts, and so it's not been recommended. I believe that the master plan, as read now, as I understand now, is for the town to buy these wastewater plants, and if you have any interest, we would happily accept your dollar and you can buy this plant from us. And then take it over as part of the wastewater management plan. We are also in the background, so I can't make a commitment to saying that this application's coming in. We're negotiating with Mashpee Commons to utilize their excess capacity, which is kind of consistent with the master wastewater plan.
right, it is.
And I have not, and I should, have a discussion with Tom, the former planner,
Yeah.
who is now the chair of the wastewater committee,
Sewer commission.
sewer commission, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, to understand where's the end game here? How can I facilitate, how can we spend the money to facilitate what it is that you want? And does this make sense? Because I believe this planning board might be looking to him
It would be better if we
Having
get his
written
recommendation
this.
on it, yeah.
to have a better understanding of why those things were done, which seem to be unique to Windchime, rather than some other areas that are there, and it's disproportional to the contribution. So,
So Evan, do you have enough direction from the board to get this on the next agenda?
I believe I
It
do.
won't be the next agenda, it'll be the agenda after, right?
and I will be going away
Depends on when he submits
for
application.
vacation, and
Okay.
so this may slip into September.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe 2 weeks after you submit the application.
I would be happy to do that. In fact, I'd like to just, through the chair, say, I would need some time to get back to
Yeah.
Evan, and then we can get.
I'll
we'll
work you
get
through the whole
things
process,
going.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay?
And the other, you look at item number 32 on page 13, which is the next page, is the 5 parts per million,
Yes.
indefinite, rather than,
Well, and then it says in here, it says 5 to 10.
well, this says definite 5, so.
Yeah, I know, it definitely says 5, and that's why, and then it said, oh, it had some very strange language associated with it. What was the language that was in the letter? Clarification on the language for the total nitrogen loading factor.
The state. Yes,
Yeah, it says something like,
It says I don't know
Shall
what
be
the
5, but
nitrogen
no more.
loading factor is unless you're talking about mass balance, because it seems to be what comes out of the pipe, but then it says nitrate loading factor, which is a mass balance model. So that was an old planning tool that the Cape Cod Commission was using in the old time, where you would take all the sources of nitrogen, stormwater, all that, add them up together, divide it across the land, and it would give you a value. And the commission wanted 5 milligrams per liter, so I have to think that that's what they meant. And I don't think that there's a problem with that because of the size of this property, but I was seeking clarification on that. And if we were gonna go back and do a special permit, we would wanna say that it's 5 out of 5. Or it's 5 to 10, or it's 3, or it's 0.
Talk to Tom Videla.
I will, that's the one thing that I wanna do. I
That's
wanna
the
talk
guy.
to the board of directors, and I would get back to Evan, but thank you very much for your
You're
time.
welcome. Thank you.
Can I ask
Yes,
one
Rob,
question?
go ahead.
You're asking for this performance bond, refund. I couldn't agree more with you. For one more piece of evidence in requesting it, could you come up with what you are currently in bond for, with the state? I mean, if it was 300,000 or whatever, 25% of a facility like yours might easily be
Yes.
much more. But I mean, that's,
And we're seeking this clarification because we're gonna go ahead and, certain technologies do certain things very reliably. So we have to have the understanding of the special permit, which is more restrictive than the state permits, in order to know what the design. So, that's kind of why this clarification is here. We have not been able to meet permit. We have an aging plant with outdated technology, and we want to do the right thing, and that's why we kind of were proactive to come out to the board and say, hey, look, when you read this special permit, there's a lot of things here we don't quite understand. So, but thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, David.
I know it's late, and I apologize to the people behind me.
Thank you, David.
But I'll
Thank
be
you,
back.
David.
Thank you.
It's not your fault, it's 10. Okay, so,
Okay, Kenny's up next, right?
Again?
so Country Club Lane, presentation of final intersection design, my favorite intersection in town. Just,
Everybody.
I love it.
Everybody. So I'm Ken Marston, I'm not gonna use that D word because that guy's not doing a good job down the street, so I'll say I'm the builder of a nice neighborhood we're putting in down off of Country Club Lane. And Charlie has been out there many times, respecting what we do, because we bring Charlie out there to make sure that we're doing it right, so he's worked closely with my engineer Dave Marquardon,
Hi, Dave.
who has designed this, and I think the fact that we were out there so many times, Charlie realized, he wanted to see if we would be willing, even though we have an approved subdivision,
Right.
that if we'd go above and beyond the call of duty to see if we could make things a little bit easier. We said, yes, we'd be willing to do that. We've had 3 meetings with the fire, the police, town planner, engineer, DPW, and the Wayne and Roger, so I mean, everybody. I don't think we missed anybody, so everybody has had some input into doing this. And what I'm looking for tonight is, I'm not looking for final approval, because I'm still working out with the town to have them do a few things with us, but I certainly am looking for approval. I just want to be able to come to a back to a meeting and say, yeah, go Ken, go now. But I don't want anything signed, any Mylars or anything like that right now, because we're still working things out with the DPW.
Okay.
Like, for one of the things that I don't want to be held up on is, I have to, well, they said call the electric company to move a pole. Well, it's not my property, so the town has to do that. And I wonder how long that's gonna take. If that's gonna take 6 months, we'll still do that, right? But I would like to be able to come to the board here and say, can I get a release of road covenant to start some constructions of homes? And then when we move it,
Okay.
before, when the people move in, we'll have the road done. I don't want to put it off any further. It sounds a little complicated, but hopefully that won't even happen. But Dave's been working close with Charlie. Charlie's seen these plans. I think we have his blessing. I'm pretty sure we do. So without any further ado, I'll give up to Dave Marquardt, the engineer. Okay?
I have no problems with these plans. I've been going out there after Charlie and stuff, and I like the way you made the cutouts, and it's a lot safer looking now.
So why don't you describe for people who are watching, and I'm sure there's plenty, exactly where this is? This is on Old Barnstable Road. that our hairpin turn, right?
Right down the hill.
Yeah, right where Old Barnstable takes the hairpin turn, right around the 10-fold of Quashnet, right, you're coming from Old Barnstable to Great Neck, it would be on your left-hand side. There's been what we call a big dirt road there for about 3 years. We've been developing it for about 3 years, and we had that's why I mentioned the electric company. We've had a bugger of a time with them. And now we're ready to do a gas company, and the gas company goes on strike, so, it's been heck, it's been heck there. But, I think everybody's pretty familiar with it. We've already talked with DPW, and we have already gotten some more signage there. So you can see now that there's a curve. The signage there was terrible. Everybody kept complaining about the turn, but there was no signage. And the speed limit sign was about this high.
Yeah.
And I said, where it was placed, your eyes, not here, it was bad, so we fixed
Right.
it. And I tell you, it's made a little bit of a difference, people do slow down, but this will be a much better, it could still be very dangerous with the stoppers that we've talked about. But if you'd like a quick overview, they can give you a quick overview, if not, you can just say fine.
No, I think that you should do the overview, because I see a left-hand turn.
Oh, yeah, let Dave do it, yeah.
So the old plan from 2002 called for 2 islands, one 28 feet wide and one 10-foot wide. Here's the approved intersection here, Old Barnstable Road here, Country Club Lane is here. Island here, 12-foot lane, 12-foot lane, 22-foot lane.
Okay. Oh,
Total
yeah.
curb cut is 155 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in our discussions,
Yeah, I'll hold it up here so they can look at it, they have a point of reference.
so we've cut the curb cut down to 80 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So we've narrowed it up by 70 feet. So what we're looking to do is existing travel lane is anywhere, which is highlighted in the blue, anywhere from 20 to 26 feet, Old Barnstable Road. Guardrail on the southern side, small guardrail on the northern side.
Okay.
So what we're looking to do is enlarge the pavement by as much as 11 feet in this particular area here.
Okay.
Our blend point would be here. Our blend point would be here. So what we're looking to do is to create an extra lane to turn left. So as you come down from 151, Country Club Lane will be on your left. We'd have a through lane that goes all the way through, 12-foot wide. Would have a spot that's painted where we had 2 spaces to turn left. We have a small island, 6-foot wide. Stop sign here. Stop line, stop sign here. Stop line here in the middle of the road. So eventually, what we'd like to have is a 12-foot way on each side of the island. So by enlarging it, we're able to achieve that, and we'd have a 13-foot lane and a 13-foot lane, reducing the intersection down to.
I just have one question. What about the golf club there? Are they still gonna come out there?
No.
Oh, they moved it.
Club comes in this way, it comes out this way.
Okay, good.
This is the clubhouse, so
Yeah.
they'll come into our road,
Oh, nice.
into our
Yeah.
road, so.
Now they have a,
Curb cuts stay the same.
Okay,
We
good.
eliminated curb cut from them, even though we have a curb cut.
so now they have a temporary road, though.
We have the
Oh,
temporary
yeah.
road,
All
that
right.
will no longer be there.
All right, I thought that was gonna be on there. Wait a
Oh my
minute.
God, that would be
Okay,
like-
that would've been
yeah.
horrible, all right.
That's just a temporary road.
Yeah, all right.
That's just a temporary road, right. Yeah. And this is very similar, if you ever drive down the road, Old Barnstable, look at Southport, they have a turn-in lane too.
Yep.
Yes.
I've done it a million times on that road, you never notice it, but they have a turn-in lane.
Yeah. I think it's a good plan.
And Dave looked at the site distances, and we try to get, your site distance of 200 feet either way, and we accomplished that with what.
Are you gonna have any, like, lights at the, on the island or something that's kind of,
Well, you know what, we had a nice island, which I loved, for merchandising before with a nice sign. I lost that. So we'll try to put some lights up in here.
maybe just, at the, when it's
Yeah.
dark out, that's,
Yeah.
That is a
yeah,
dark corner,
absolutely.
yeah.
We have to light it, because this is, it's gonna be like a 55 and over community,
All right.
they're all ranches, it's gonna be just like Washington Valley.
Yeah.
So be, people like me, people like me in the 60s, that will be living there, and they wanna be able to see at night. So, we'll put some lighting there, we'll put some lighting over by the golf course too. And we're talking with DPW, doing some, selective trimming here, because really, when we trim this area here, that will improve that site.
give the site better, yep.
Yeah, and that's within the road shoulder. The golf course has said that they're willing to do that work with them, so that shouldn't be a problem. We'll get that solved. And like I said, we've had 3 meetings, this wasn't just one, we've done
Yeah.
South Third design. So, put a lot of work into it to make it right, keep Charlie happy.
Oh, looks good though.
I
It's
had a
safe, a lot
question.
safer.
I definitely like the golf course merging onto your road and the widening of the road in that area. The painted islands I have an issue with. You know, people can stray across the painted island. Have you considered using these flexible barriers, you know, the ones that pivot, if you hit them, they just fall down, they pop back up, and they reflect? You see them on highways all over, you
I
know,
made that suggestion, and Catherine said they just don't last.
they don't, yeah, but then you fix them. If they don't last, somebody hit them, and otherwise, you know,
Well, right here, we get some rumble strips here, too.
oh, yeah, no, I'm thinking on the turnout, the turnout.
No, here.
Oh, over here.
Yeah, on the main traffic.
Yeah, you know what, I leave that up to the town. We'll talk to the town about that, that's town road.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can't make that call.
Right.
But I'll mention that to Catherine, but we did have that discussion, and she mentioned plows and whatever, but I'll bring that back up to her again, saying that the planning board requested it.
Well, I'm saying, have you considered it?
Yeah,
And
we have, yeah.
and-
Yeah, we did, yeah.
One other issue that we dealt with was the fire department being able to negotiate the turn with his ladder, getting in there, so where those reflectors are, he probably wouldn't want to hit those even though they do move. But I would say that what Ken has suggested would be the appropriate thing to do there. If the lanes are marked, okay, you know, people will cut across them, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But if there are rubble strips in there, perhaps that'll,
Yeah, but you don't have it in Old Barnstable Road. The rumble strip is on the private road. And after leaving here, I go right through that curve.
Yeah.
And I slow down to, I won't say the 15 posted. That's a recommendation anyway.
Right.
It's a yellow sign, but I'm leery of somebody coming around that,
Yeah.
and everybody drives a beautiful car in this town, and they don't want to get their paint scratched by hitting one of these little flexible barriers. So they're gonna slow down too.
Yeah.
I think that's worth the bang for the buck, right there.
Yeah, we can mention that to Catherine again, no question.
I love it.
That's it, it's nice and simple.
I love it.
I want to make it more challenging like everything else you guys handled tonight. This is pretty simple. Holy moly, what a night. Did I have fun or what? I just couldn't keep my mouth shut sometimes, so I apologize.
You were right to get up.
You
You
know,
were,
I
you were
know.
right to get up.
Me and you would make good
We're
partners.
business in Ashby, you know, we know what we're doing.
So when are you gonna run for planning board?
Yeah, I was on this, my father was on the planning board in the 60s.
Yeah.
My dad.
Wow.
That chairman for like 20 years almost, right?
His
I was on
father,
zoning board.
his father called me to ask me if I would consider being the consultant for the town.
So he's the one who hired Charlie, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we go way back, Charlie and I.
That's great. That's great. All right.
I did stick my neck out and suggest to Ken that you wouldn't need a public hearing for this, that you could at least vote to be in favor of the changes that we've all discussed.
I don't think we
I
need.
mean, we can have consensus that, yes, we like it. I mean, I like it.
I like it, I think, you know,
I like it.
Yeah, well, I'll come back for final approval after I
Yeah.
negotiate with the
Yeah.
town a little bit, which I'm not gonna win, so, but I'll attempt it.
Sorry.
Can't fight time out. Thank you.
thanks, honey.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, David.
All right, so just one last, I think last item. Oh, property owner update, roadway improvement 20 Blue Castle. We already,
You had suggested that go on.
oh, they didn't come back.
I was under the, yeah, well, I wasn't sure, so it went on. I had never heard anything from them, so. just
Oh, I think we should keep it on the agenda just in
I'll
case
give them a
they,
call this week and see
they
what
want to come back.
status
All right, so under Chairman's report, I was looking at this today, the Mashpee Planning Board, public hearing and meeting procedures. There are some things, like Dave said, things that we used to do, that I'm kind of missing. So but they're not, I don't think they're in here, so maybe we should put that on the next agenda, and then we'll modify it as we need.
Very good.
Okay?
I just want to say one thing. The worst thing would happen to Evans is they didn't have Tom here to show him how he had the plan. Emphasis is going by what
I know.
the town planner and those people are telling him. If Tom was here,
We
not
tried.
necessarily, he would have done like Tom, but
I
he
appreciate
would have
that.
knew the procedures.
Well, I'm never going to be Tom Padala.
Yeah, the
It's
transition.
not gonna
But
be the
we-
same, but I
but
will do
we-
my best to accommodate the
Yeah.
board.
We tried to get the funding and we tried to get everything hired, everybody hired, so that there was overlap, so.
If there's things, ways that you want me to operate, I will do my best to retrofit how I like to work.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be the same as it was.
No, we gotta kind of accept that too.
Just know that I'm gonna do the best I can for this board and the town.
This
All
is,
right. I make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, good work, everybody.